budget workshop, Board of Selectmen budget workshop for Thursday, January 19th to order. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Those on the screen as well. I see Lou is here, as well as Amy Earls from the Board of Finance. Mike Gales in the house. So, welcome. All right. First up today is who, Mary Jane?
Zoning Board of Appeals.
Jane,
Good morning, everybody.
how are you today?
Feeling chipper bright and early. And how zoning got first on the list, I don't
117.
know.
It's a high priority right
Number
now.
117, and we will, are you prepared to do zoning as well?
Oh, yes,
We do
oh,
zoning.
yes.
It's split in the past.
Oh, you're asking if I'm prepared to do planning and zoning as well as zoning
Yes.
board of appeals, am I ending it?
Perfect. I have these split because in the past we've
Yep,
done it
no,
to different people, but we'll move you right
I'm
along
happy
here.
to do that. So would you like to start with the zoning board of appeals?
Let's start.
Yes.
Let's start there.
117.
117.
Thank you. I'm still getting the lingo. Great, so just a total budget request here, operating budget request of $2,050. Forgive me, my name is Jamie Stein. I'm the town planner. Good to see you. So just some moderate increases here in the expenses and travel. It is now $400. That is an increase above the $100 from previous years. And this is to accommodate, now our land use commissions are required to do 4 hours of continuing education and training. The Connecticut Bar Association has put together a day-long land use sort of case law and legal seminar, and that is $45 for each attendee. So I'd like to be able to cover that cost for the zoning board of appeals.
Great.
The other moderate increase in this budget is in the line of office supplies. Very slight. I think I went an additional $50 over to accommodate. We now, the new assistant town planner, who will also serve the role of zoning enforcement officer, has door tags for when he goes to ring on bells and pay a visit. And it has his name and his contact information for the visit. And those were secured from CCM. The extent of our request for zoning board.
Any questions or comments?
Seems so much until you.
It's $300. It's a
20% increase.
As Jamie mentioned, legislation was passed, I think it was 2 years ago, relative to, this is part of the whole affordable housing initiative and the zoning rewrite. So this is, again, we can consider this an unfunded mandate, but in this case, it's somewhat negligible.
Excuse me, they don't have a secretary? They don't, because it's all blank.
Correct, they do not.
Oh.
We have a,
It's in the job description. The job description for the admin.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions? Let's move on to the
great,
Zoning.
it's short and sweet. Let's move on to planning and zoning. Total budget here, help me out, Mary Jane, we've requested 243 something. I didn't bring my phone.
242,551.
Could you repeat that number?
242,551. It's
Great.
116.
Thank you. So there are some increases here. I've put in an allocation of 5 additional hours a week for our administrative assistant. She is well into her 2nd week of employment now, and she is amazing. She is wonderful. She is a godsend, and we are happy to have her. And if we do have quite a workload in the office, running several commissions and committees. And so to be able to offer her, if she would like, 5 additional hours a week. So that's the budget that you're seeing there, of an additional 260 hours for a cost of $5,517.20.
Jamie, if I can interrupt for a second, if you don't mind.
Nope.
Jamie and I've had quite a discussion about this. And So the individual will still be considered a 35-hour-a-week employee. They'll still be on the same, rate for, vacation and everything else that goes with that, with the optional 5 hours, with your approval, of course, the optional 5 hours additional per week, it will be straight time because we don't pay overtime until it's over 40 hours a week. And so this is a way for the planning and zoning to keep up with the extensive workload that's come through. And so it's separated out as an overtime account, but it's straight time. The other thing I want to bring to your attention, some people were not here yesterday. All the board and commission secretaries, in this case, you'll see in the top line on whatever page this is, I've gone up because I have proposed bringing all the board and commission secretaries from 1875 an hour to 1925 an hour. You'll see that consistent throughout all the budgets. That's about 2 2/3% increase for the recording secretaries for boards and commissions. Thank you. Jamie, back to you.
Great, thank you. It gave me the time to get my little digital cheat sheet here. Thank you. Terrific. So if I could direct your attention to this consultant line, I'm just looking at in the past here. This is really a couple of things I'm trying to accommodate here. As you know, we're in the midst of, it's been about 3 years now that we've been doing a comprehensive rewrite of our zoning regulations. I'm hoping to bring that to a vote with the Planning and Zoning Commission in a public hearing on April 19th. We have pushed back a month, but I feel pretty solid that we're going to get it done by April 19th. And I do anticipate a few things that will be, I hate to use the term, but, we're kicking the can down the road on a few items that we just can't come to resolution or detail out enough. One of them happens to be an interest in conservation development and the design of that and what that looks like. So it's just a few things that I think we may need some assistance with in future. I would also like the opportunity, I don't know if it works this way, but I'll put it out there, to secure the services of a graphic designer. There are certain sort of process flows, information, details, perhaps for our housing committee about, what affordable housing is and what it means to us that we can kind of eloquently put together in what I like to refer to as an infographic that takes some skills to create something like that in digital format, kind of like a one-pager that we could share. Ann and I have spoken about trying to get the historic district and all of those moving pieces for residents into something nice and concise. So that's why I've made the request for some consultancy dollars. The other increase that you'll see here is the education and training. I've doubled this line. It was $1,500. It's now $3,000. I myself secured the American Institute of Certified Planners earlier this summer. That is a professional accreditation that requires membership to the Connecticut chapter as well as the national chapter of the American Planning Association. Requires continuing education, and the annual planning conference is about $800. So that's my own sort of continuing education and training. Also, our assistant town planner, who is required to be CASIO certified, which is the Connecticut Association of Zoning Enforcement Officials. He too requires training to get that certification. I'm happy to say he's well on his way. He passed his first exam, and there are 2 exams. And so he too will require continuing education to keep that training. So hence the additional budget request there.
Questions?
Small amount, but the uniform and clothing amount.
Yeah, so that is meant to be for, I think Nigel, our assistant town planner, has utilized it already. It was work boots. It was kind of grubby, I guess, work clothes when he goes out on site. He inspects soil and erosion control measures on site. He inspects stormwater management facilities, the kind of more minor ones on site.
Mitch, is that part of the union contract?
I'm sorry, I was,
Yes, that's
Uniform.
yes, the uniforms are, sorry, thank you.
Any other questions? No. Just quick. had we always had the use of Glenn Chalder as a consulting line item, or didn't we have a separate fund for the zoning rewrite?
We have had consulting in this line before.
Right,
I
right.
don't know specifically what it was for. The zoning rewrite, we did have money in the codification
Right.
line, which may have included consulting services. We were budgeting that separate through the capital.
Okay. My assumptions were probably close to, if not having run out of what we had reserved.
Oh, yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
That was a good question, because I knew we started it before 2022. It was blank here, so it was in that, from that other
Sure.
source.
Right, we moved.
Conservation Development always had a consultant, I'm pretty sure.
I see it here in the digital copies.
Instead of budgeting it through the budget every year a little bit, we put money aside through fund balance. So, we can certainly review what we have left there and potentially use some of those funds if there's anything left.
Anything else? Anybody on Zoom who wants to ask questions? Good. Jamie, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Historic District next. Good morning, Ann.
How are you? Historic District is 123. And I'm here, Mary Jane. Nice. We've been going back and forth on email, but.
It's been my computer consultant. My name is Ann Street. I live on Broad Street in Guilford, and I am the vice chair of the Historic District Commission. Presently, our chairman is out of town.
Yes.
So we've pretty much had the same budget for like 20 years. It's always runs around $3,000. This past year, we increased our fees $50 to $75. We went back and forth on how you would structure the fees based on the dollar value of the project. We don't ever really see those. We didn't want to price it so high that when somebody wanted to do a fence, they thought it was, excessive. We talked about a two-tiered, small projects, big projects, that's kind of subjective. So we just raised it across the board to 75. So our budget is kind of a moving target because I think we based the income this year on 25 applications. I think we normally run closer to 30. If we get 30 applications, the income will go up, but our expenses also go up. Pretty much our only expenses are paying our secretary, which got a raise this year, and the legal notices that we're required to put in, maybe a little copying or something for meetings, but that's pretty much the core of our budget. So if we get 5 more applications, then our expenses go up commensurately. We usually put in, this year we did put in $500 or $600 as miscellaneous, and that covers any overage. We also sometimes have given out awards to projects that we thought were very good and needed some acknowledgement. This year, we're going to reinstitute a program that we did before to write to all homeowners and explain what the historic district is about. And those we think may have to go registered mail. So that's, $10 per. And so that would be where we would use our excess, if any.
Why
So,
would they for registered mail?
well, that way you know that they got it. We send all of our certificates registered mail when they go to the property owners. I think that's required by statute,
State
yeah,
statute.
with a return request.
Do you have a ballpark figure of how many how many properties are in the historic district?
Yeah, a couple hundred. You think that's a lot?
It's a lot.
Oh, I don't know. When I lived in Mobile, I had a district of 2,500 buildings. So I don't think it's a lot. I mean, it seems like a lot. We get,
Properties.
we get,
Two twenty something.
yeah, and it's in 2 districts.
No, I don't.
We get about,
I would have thought it was more myself.
well, there's a lot more in the National Register District, and I would explain that to you, but probably this is not. But the National Register District goes all the way out to past the cemetery, over to Travis, Noble.
Well,
and
that's
all the way-
individual properties in different locations also, right?
No, in the historic district?
No, in the National Register.
Yeah, there's some in Dudleytown and there's some up in North Guilford, but there's multiple, maybe 800 or 900 buildings in our resource inventory in the National Register
Yeah, so
district.
I would have thought there were a lot more to it, but I think it's probably the other district that you're talking.
No, we have two. We have the center downtown, Guilford Center, and then we have Whitfield. And it's a couple hundred buildings. We get about 30 applications, and that number will shift. There's two things that generate applications to us is new people buy properties, and they usually come in with a long list. I want to do this, I want to do that, I need a new garage, I need this. So that's one big application. But when interest rates go up or people aren't moving, we tend to get a lot of, well, there's nothing else to do, let's fix up the old place. We get a lot of fences, we get, I want to put storm doors on and stuff. And so we saw a big bump in projects over COVID because people had nothing else to do. I suspect that we will see a lot more of those small projects this year as interest rates squeeze the, shuffling around of properties and people decide to stay put and just improve. And I think we'll see more small, that would just be anecdotal, but I think over the years, that's what's been.
The letters, are you gonna send them just to new homeowners every year or everybody?
We have not routinely sent letters to all of our property owners. We could do a postal patron drop, I think, for our districts.
They wouldn't have to be registered.
They wouldn't have to be registered.
So you
no.
just want to send the registered ones to brand new.
We thought that there was a distinct advantage to knowing that we had connected with people who maybe didn't know about the historic district. The historic district status, the local historic district status, not the national register status, is required to be contained in the deed chain, which the realtor or their guys should have picked up. So they shouldn't come in and say, well, we didn't know. Should, legally, they should know. But just in case they don't, we thought that would be a nice thing.
It might include it in your informational mailing, might be the real.
We have reached out to realtors a number of times and offered our services to come in for their Tuesday morning chats and things and explain. They're not really seem to be interested for the most part.
Shame on that.
Yeah.
I say there are some pretty tight disclosure rules for real estate agents and
Yeah.
closing attorneys, right?
And it's supposed to be on the deed chain. Yeah.
Well, that was very thorough, man. Thank
When
you.
you say, excuse me, when you say supposed to be, are there any consequences of it not being?
I can't speak to that specific legislation. Before I was working here in Guilford, I was part of a group, advocacy group in the state that got passed a mandate that it be on the deed chain. That it was required, once a building was in a local historic district, that had to show up as an encumbrance on the deed chain. I don't know what the,
The enforcement mechanism.
enforcement on that is. I can't remember. We could find out pretty easily, but it,
Being on the deed and being told that it's something on the deed is people buying a house sometimes aren't
yeah.
paying that. much
But
attention to
it
being
should
in
go
the
on
district.
like a plumbing lien or something like that. It should show
Yeah.
up.
It survives.
Yeah.
When did the district get formed, actually? Do you recall?
The first district was the town center south, and that was about 35 years ago.
So at that time, there should have been an effort to deed,
Yeah.
to deed
Yeah.
restrict, or
Yeah.
not restrict,
Should have
but
been.
deed note.
And then the Whitfield district is probably about 15 years old.
Good question. We'll talk to Hannah about that, see what, she's been here long enough to know.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not 35 years, but she's definitely been here 50
Or
years.
just identifying, get the list of properties and notifying them, maybe that's a step in the right direction. so
Yeah.
that Their
Yeah.
excuse lists can be.
One
Sure.
less item on that, yeah.
Good.
Any questions?
Anything else? No? Thank you, Ann.
Okay, thank you.
Stuff is Lynn Landry and
Oh,
Guilford
here
Family
comes
Services.
trouble.
Yep, you got it. 143.
Would you have it any other way?
No. Not in the least.
You never have to guess what I'm thinking, right?
I think Tracy or Karen are gonna be sharing their screen.
Yeah,
For both Lynn and Tammy
Yeah.
with their information.
and I do have paper
Copies.
copies, if people want paper copies. All right, so let me start with our budget, and then I have some supporting documents to just talk about some of our programs. Our budget is pretty flat compared to last year. It's $662,061. The increases are in salaries, which was contractual. Boards and commission, which Mitch has talked about, a little bit higher for contractual. And then our other big uptick was utilities. We were advised to go 35% on electric, which really made my blood boil, but what are you gonna do? We're all facing that.
We're hoping we won't have to use that, but.
Yeah,
and
we're
we're also
hoping-
hoping it's not any higher.
We're hoping that it will be a little lower, so that upped my utilities budget by about $3,100. A little extra in building and maintenance, because I do have, an older building, and although it's in really good shape at this point, it's always good to put a little bit extra, because things are more expensive as we fix things, as we all know. And the other uptick is copiers and copier lease and supplies, which is just an extra $50. To explain some of the salaries, as you know, last year, we made 3 part-time positions full-time. That's covered by ARPA money at about $105,000. We get a little bit of money from the Department of Children and Families. And the other possibility will be from the Juvenile Review Board grants, about $10,000, but that's never a guarantee, so I won't know that until this summer. And so when that happens, we apply that to salaries. So that's salaries. Oh, that's good, Tracy, that's the first one that I'd like to show. So on the board, on the screen, we have, go to my next. I want to talk a little bit about our clinical program. And what you see there is the history of appointments. And if you look at the green bar there on the right is last fiscal year, which we had 3,329 appointments. That's a lot. If you look at the previous years, that's considerably more than anything else. But as we know, the brown one happened right after COVID or during COVID. Green was this past fiscal year. The red bar on the right, we're already up to 1,892 appointments, and that's only half the year. So I think we'll be surpassing the green bar this year. Tracy, can you show the next one, please? So there's our revenue trends. So the brown on the right, 2021, our revenue goal was 120,000. We hit $178,000. This past fiscal year, I had raised it to 135,000 as our projected revenue, and we hit 214,000. So that's a double-edged sword. That just means we're seeing a lot of kids. So it's good, but it's not. At the 6-month mark, which is the last bar there, which is an approximate figure, but pretty close to accurate, is 103,000, which means that by the end of February, we will have hit 100% revenue. Could you show the last one, please, Tracy? So in the in the upper left-hand corner, there are clinical services. 3,329 appointments the past fiscal year. We saw 394 kids altogether in prevention services and clinical services, which is up from the previous year of 218 kids. Our referral sources, Parents Police School. We have our Guilford-based clinician, Guilford High School-based clinician, who saw 40 students. Our Adams School-based clinicians saw 59 students. That's in groups and individuals. So they're embedded in the schools, on top of having a caseload at the clinic as well. Can't forget our prevention services, because we're not all clinical, which seems like we are because our numbers are so high and we bring in a lot of revenue. But on our prevention side, which is what we really are as a youth service bureau, we had 99 individual programs, saw 2,853 participants. One-time events like Spooktacular and other special events that we may have, we had 16 of those, and we reached almost 4,500 participants. That's our prevention side, just as high as our clinical side. The last thing I want to talk about is the upper right-hand corner, and that's our collaborations with the police department. So with the police department, we do our CDCP, which is our community development program. We go out on calls. The cops call us if there's trauma with kids. They deal with the adults. We deal with the kids. That's our CDCP program. So we had 12 call outs, which was a little low, but saw 16 clients because of that. That's on top of our clinical numbers. The other program that we do with them is the Juvenile Review Board. We saw 14 cases, which is a little lower than last year, but that's because of the new marijuana laws. So whereas we'd be seeing kids because they had marijuana, they were out at the docks smoking and things like that, now they just get a slap on the wrist because of the new laws.
Underage kids.
Underage kids too, there's a limit, yeah. So that's changed things a little bit, but we're going to see an increase, I guarantee it, with, with recreation. No, I can't do recreational.
Rick
Rick
will
would be really upset.
Don't use cannabis.
Yeah, with legalized marijuana, kids are gonna think it's okay, and we're gonna see an uptick in those cases. DPHIPs are our domestic violence home intervention program, and that's when the police give us cases, and we just do referrals on that. Those are just phone calls, but that's 72 cases. So on top of what our clinicians do, our social workers, their caseload, we roll into their jobs, the CDCP program, because they do go out on calls, the domestic violence program and JRB, and those are all non-funded programs that we do with the police department. Our last program, which is, and I'm sure that the chief may have spoken about this, is our SWAT program. And let me get the lingo correct here. I don't want anybody mad at me.
It's not special weapons and tactics.
It's not special weapon, no, it's not SWAT. Just bear with me for a second. Somewhere. Here it is. So SWAT. And I'm sure the chief spoke about this a little bit. He talked about it at department heads meeting last week, social work and police partnership. And what we're doing is embedding a social worker with the police department. Milford does this, Branford does this, and because of the new police accountability laws, it really helps them. They're not trained as social workers. We're not trained as police officers, but marry the two together and you get, a pretty good marriage there where they get a lot of repeat calls that are really social work in nature and mental health in nature. And so we started back up. We started in a little after COVID, and then we had to stop because of the uptick in COVID numbers because we do ride-alongs. The social workers ride along with the police. And so it kind of blends into all of the other programs that we do with them. And so then the person will either look at the reports or because of the ride-alongs, they deal with whatever was happening mental health wise. So when we started back up with the ride-alongs back in September, we've had 25 cases already. And so we have an intern right now who rides along. The reason I'm bringing this up is there's no ask for money this year, but I'm looking at next year and probably partnering with the police department to have a permanent person doing this because it's invaluable. And I think that's it.
Any questions?
Increases the appointments and the caseload.
Yeah.
Are people seeing a longer time to get an appointment or?
No, so we pride ourselves because of the part-time people that we made full-time. We don't have a waiting list. And, if I get an inkling that there's even one person on the waiting list, somebody's taking that case on. Because we shouldn't have a waiting list. Out in, the hospital world, case managers and clinicians will have caseloads of 60 to 70. So if you have 15 to 20 here, that's really quite manageable. And, you know, our clinical director at this point, because she manages all of the social workers, oversees all the cases, the psychiatrists, and everybody else doesn't have a caseload, but she could. Our program director, Carol, is a licensed social worker, doesn't have a caseload because she's working on the prevention side, but she could.
Got it, okay.
The only one who can't is me, because I'm not a licensed social worker, although I've been accused of being a social worker.
Of playing one on TV?
I'm playing one in real life, right? Yeah.
And I got a couple questions. How many people do you have now on staff?
10,
10. And then how many are being paid through an ARPA grant?
3.
Any? Okay, there's 3. And then I can see from your statistics that your appointments sort of exploded around COVID
Yep.
time. They went up by like 50%. Am I also seeing now that they are falling and you're on
Nope.
track to 2,000?
They are not falling at all. They're,
It's halfway through the year.
It's a 10% increase if
Yeah.
it's up at this rate.
the,
That last bar is a partial year then?
it's 6 months. It's this year. So we're gonna surpass even last year, which was
So
3,300
you might be on
appointments.
your way to 4,000 or something.
Yeah, which is a little scary. The other thing that's happening with the kids is that, I mean, and we're discharging people, and we're still up that high, which means the acuity level is also very high. So it's not like, I don't feel like going to school. It's, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, we have kids with suicidal ideation. I mean, that's serious. You know, if there's somebody in elementary school that wants to kill themselves, it really, it's heartbreaking.
As Jonathan, and I'm glad you brought that up. We had made the decision to use American Rescue Plan funds to increase the staff. That it would be a temporary situation and that we would be able to revisit prior to, or well, at least by
At the
2026.
time the ARPA
By the
money
time
comes.
the
Yeah.
ARPA funds have to be expended, with the anticipation that if the caseloads drop down, that we would
Right,
adjust staffing.
right.
We would
Right.
literally adjust back down. But the numbers are clear. We haven't gotten to that point, and they appears to continue to grow. So
Yeah. And you'll see on, you know, you can take one of these handouts that our normal caseload before COVID was 50 to 60 to be able to meet our revenue projection, which at the time, you know, was around 120, a little lower in previous years. And we just hit 95 again. We have 95 kids in the clinic, with every day getting 2 or 3 requests for services.
Now, the ARPA money is supposed to go out a couple of years, right? When does
2026, it has to be expended.
2026?
2026, yeah.
Because there's obviously going to be a little bit of a lag, right? I think this is triggered from COVID. It seems to be, timing is perfect, right?
It's not letting up.
Blaine, you mentioned about charges for the revenue
Yeah.
side of it. And it was, I think you said, well, it was 135 and 135 are the two numbers. You said it's substantially more
Right.
now, the way that, the
Right.
way the actuals are. I'm just curious, why not bring that revenue number up to be more reflective of, I mean, it's a conservative budgeting, I get that.
No, that's a good question, and it is conservative, and the reason that I do that is you never know what's going to happen. So I could lose a clinician tomorrow, and that's a paneled clinician. I now cannot bill the insurance for that caseload because that clinician is gone. So I have to either shift the clients, discharge them. We lost paneling with one of our insurance companies before Christmas, and now we're, for whatever reason. So now, you know, I can't bill that insurance company, so that revenue is not coming in. I can only charge the client what their copay would have been because it's not their fault that now this particular insurance company were out of network. So we're working to do that. So that's a loss of revenue. But when we're bringing in the amount that we are, I'm not too concerned about that insurance company. But if we were, you know, hard up for bringing in revenue, I'd be very concerned. So you never know what's going to happen with the insurance world and with paneled clinicians.
That's certainly a discussion that could have with the Board of Selectmen when we look at the revenue. Just knowing that if we did bring that revenue up,
Yeah.
if there,
Some
you know,
risk
so
is
when I
some
come
risk is
once a
some
month
risk.
and we say,
There's
how come
risks.
Youth and Family Services is down? You know, there would be those risks. So, but definitely a conversation
Right.
that we can have when we're
It's
reviewing
fluctuated.
revenue.
I remember the years where it was a struggle to make revenue. Now
The
it's-
first couple
yeah.
years, the first couple years that I was here, it wasn't a good formula that had been put forth by my predecessor, and so it was unrealistic, and we did meet revenue. but I don't like not meeting goals. So I looked at that formula and redid all of that. And ever since then, and this is my 15th budget presentation, we've always met revenue, if not exceeded it. And I'm always conservative because you just don't know what's going to happen. I think we'll be fine this year.
Any other questions?
It's Veronica. Is there a way to get this presentation either uploaded in board pack or a copy of it, Lynn?
Yes, Tracy has it.
And
Okay.
Veronica, it won't surprise you to know that when we make the budget presentation to the Board of Finance in February, there'll be this and more documentation.
That's
from
right.
Lynn, relative to the presentation. As you may recall, there's usually one section where we list, we use a lot of data to justify the budget request. So but we can get you this copy.
Yeah, Tracy will add this presentation and the data that's supplied for next presentation by Tammy, both on board pack, and you'll be able to have it.
Thank you.
Well, Lynn, the last 2 years that you presented, you were telling us about the waiting lists and how concerned you were about it. So it's encouraging to hear that with the part-time going to full-time, that you're on top of it.
Yeah,
now.
there's no
So
way,
that's
and I'm gonna give you a real life example. I had somebody that I know, young kid, 7 years old, being suspended from school, can you imagine? And so, because I really didn't want him seen here because I know the family, I spent a half a day making half a dozen phone calls to all my connections, and they all turned me down. And because they have waiting lists, they're full, and I thought, well, this is being lodged up here when you need me. You know, so we ended up taking him because this kid is suffering. And I don't get involved with the clinicals, so, you know, there's a good barrier there. I would have rather he went somewhere else, but there's waiting lists everywhere. Agencies, individual therapists, nobody's taking new people, or they're doing telehealth, and you can't do telehealth with a 7-year-old. You just can't. So I think it's something that, you know, Guilford should be proud of, that we have a clinic here, that there's no waiting list, and we're seeing almost 100 kids.
Keep up the good work.
That's my team, thank you.
You have a good team. All right. Thanks.
All right,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
MJ, we can slide Pete.
Next victim.
Well,
Or Tammy.
Tammy, and then Pete's after Tammy anyway.
Yes.
Pete, you're okay to wait one more presentation?
I'll be out of here by quarter.
Oh, Tammy's next,
Yes.
and then you.
Absolutely.
That's okay?
Thank you for the.
Yeah.
Mary Jane, which number is department is Tammy?
141.
Let me introduce the recently retired but not yet released. Released Tammy DeFrancisco. And let me take the opportunity. Tammy, thank you very much for being as gracious as you have been to extend your stay beyond when you wanted to make sure that the department continues to run smoothly. We've got another couple of weeks, and then we're gonna let you go.
February 6th is it, she told me. That's it.
There is no longer a bungee cord.
Yeah.
We're happy to have her with us today.
Actually, this is my most stressful task is this. Actually, Anna just reminded me that a month and a half ago, I said I was never going to have to do another budget. And there I said.
That was the biggest problem. with-
Gee, I think I'm
That was-
insulted.
That was the biggest problem in convincing Tammy to stay another month. She says, that means I have to go through another budget.
We try to make it so easy.
Yeah.
Oh, we actually hired you.
Oh. If you'll bear with us for 1 second,
Yeah.
just have a quick change.
If when I put it in ClearGov, I meant to.
You meant it to, what is it?
To be 250.
Oh, down?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, it's a change down, so we're okay.
I didn't catch it
All
the
right,
other day.
So you discussed, so the last item, education and training, will be 250 instead of 490. So, but we'll get to that. All right? Simple enough.
Okay. Hello, everyone. The increase in the salary line is contractual, as is everyone's. travel expenses increased based on the IRS rates due to hybrid meetings since COVID. It is unknown if travel will rise to pre-COVID numbers for training, education, and conferences. So I left it as what it was, the mileage, and what it was last year. Most of our mileage this year and last year was in town because we are 3/4 of a mile away from town hall and the food bank, a little bit more. So that's really our mileage. But I don't know what travel is going to be like next year. So increase in utilities is based on the average cost of last year with the suggested increases from the companies as communicated by finance. Increase in building maintenance is a direct result of increase in costs, and that was only due to services from pest control, which is a must at 263 Church Street. Our copier line item dropped due to our lease payments are up, and we now own the machine, I believe.
Yes.
Our permit and dues line item went up, and the education and training dropped. And that was due to a fee and training restructuring on a membership that we belong to as local administrators of social services. So basically, that's where, oh, I forgot, yeah. And the last one was I did 2,000 into office equipment because I was informed after I had done the budget that my one of my staff's drawers constantly falls out. We've had facilities over there to fix it, and there's just no fixing it. And it is probably a desk I had 20 years ago, bought new. It was broken when I gave it.
Well
to-
used.
Yeah. So.
Doesn't know yet.
With the traffic restructuring allowed in 2021, we expanded our offerings, programs, and projects to respond to the need. I have included an update of those programs in the handouts. While at this point, we still seem to have not gone a full year with a full-time staff of 4, because there's always been someone leaving and some position being vacant anywhere from 1 to 4 months at a time, then time spent training. We still have managed to maintain the status quo, provide services, improving what we can when we can. Additionally, there continues to be more programs introduced statewide, regionally, and through the utility companies, all of which we incorporated in our program. The demographics of our client base continues to soar towards an increase in senior and disabled households. We are probably at 8 yet. We continue to look for ways to partner with senior staff, with the senior center staff, and bringing additional programs and services to the seniors, as currently 81% of our clientele households have either a member over 60 or disabled. We recognize there is an increasing need based on rising costs for everyday items and stagnant income for this demographic. We find ourselves not only providing the services as community partners that we are contracted to, such as heating assistant and rent rebate, but are providing more and more case management and advocacy for this demographic as well, while continuing to offer supplemental and necessary services for the broader range of Guilford households and families. It is my hope that the next director is going to have more time to actually be prepared to and interact with agencies and committees and boards to bring in more programs and programming for the demographics that we are serving now. I really have not had that kind of time. I've developed and enhanced what I have over the years, but our clientele has greater and greater needs, especially the seniors. And because last couple of years, I've always been training somebody to do the intake work. We did take on the new position. We've had an admin, new admin. Now we've just lost an admin. We've had 2 intake people. I've been backing up and doing all the extra work. So hopefully the new person isn't going to have those issues.
On that note, with the changes in personnel that, we're right in the midst of, Do you think that the education and training is adequate? I mean, are we gonna need more people coming aboard?
Well, the way the local administrator, a lot of what we do, there, it's offered, freely. So through the area agency on aging and the local administrators. So the class actually, has made it so that the increase in the education that we took down was the monthly meetings. And the increase is now going to incorporate the whole staff being part of that group.
I think my question is, you know,
Formal training.
Formal training, actually,
are the
I,
incoming people all certified in whatever they have to be?
right.
That's what I'm trying to get
And,
to.
and actually, I was reading something the other day where I was looking at, oh, this looks like a good training, this looks like a good training, and I did put it in the folder for the director. But I did notice that there was a charge for every,
Well, that's why I'm
Yeah.
asking the question,
Yeah.
because we have, you know, especially a director and assistant coming on, are the applicants up to speed with all of their training, certification, and or whatever? And if not, should we put something?
There, correct me if I'm wrong, there aren't a significant number of certifications needed for this. This is experience in learning the programs and
Yeah,
administering the
for those,
programs.
yeah, for
We're
those.
not talking about a licensed clinical.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So we have, you've looked at that.
Yeah.
There are a few workshops, certainly, and I did look, there was probably about $150 worth, and I said, well, she could pick and choose, because there is some money in this budget, so.
Just for the board's edification, because of the turnover, there are two positions, right? There's one vacant now. We've hired a replacement for Tammy. There will be some savings on the salary line.
Matt, can I throw something out there?
Certainly.
So Tammy, and do enough of these meetings where I just, I think I'd like to thank you for incredible service and just describe that you come into these meetings with such a passionate dedication. I think you probably helped many, many people along the years.
Thank you.
Yep, and I've got probably an easy budget question for you, because it's really for Mitch.
Yeah.
A lot of the increases in the budgets across the board are because of the salary increases. Do you have the sheet you usually give us that shows the increases for each contracted bargaining unit?
I don't have it with me, but I can get it for you.
Okay, all right, so that was about it.
I'd like to actually echo that.
Thank you.
You and I have had several conversations, my family, with a member of my family, I know how important you are going to be sorely missed, my family member. So I wish you well. Well, a job well done.
Thank you very much.
Anyone on the Zoom call with questions or comments?
No, good, great work.
Thank you.
I do have a question on the food bank. I know the discussion has come up every time, the building that the food bank is in
No.
and the location. And it seems to me at one point, part of the discussion was that having the food bank in a separate location was preferred.
Yes,
Is that?
very much so. Very much so. The location of it is fine. I mean, you know, because it's not in the,
Out of the way.
it's out of the way, and not in the middle of town. The building itself does need work, obviously. It's small.
That's why I was asking, because I
Manageable.
know that's gonna come up at some point, because the building is what it is. But I just wanted to reinforce in my mind that keeping them separate is preferred.
Yes, it is. It is preferred.
And it's a convenience thing, I understand, and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Very important.
And during COVID, we partnered with the senior center. So 2 times a month, actually the senior bus for seniors that can't go over to the food bank. We take the order ahead of time and we pack it. The senior bus goes over. We have the first and third Fridays of the month, and they make the deliveries to the seniors. So that works out nicely for everybody. Also, the food bank in this last year, we got a grant to rehab the public space for the clients. And then we got about $10,000. And we also got probably about $10,000 of in-kind donations between work and materials. And we really, really created a nice space. We have not opened it up for people to go in and out yet because of COVID still, because it is still a small space. But we've made a few changes, so it works nicely over there. But
And we also invested in a generator,
we invested in a generator, yeah,
so we don't lose product.
Yeah, we've done some changes over there. It would be nice if we could do something about the look of the building on the outside, but
This is the location near the train station, I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Sad to say, I've only been there a couple times, but I've been there.
the nice thing is the last couple of years, we got probably 1,000 pounds of food a month for the last almost 3 years from the Connecticut Food Share free. And we've actually we got them to start delivering it to us, which was wonderful. So we did have to purchase food too, but not from them, but that'll change probably in June. We'll go back to buy cents on the dollar, really, but it's been a great savings for the food.
Anyone else?
The only one thing that I can say is I really feel that the enhancement needs to be for the senior population in this town. And I was having an email conversation with one of the directors over at the Area Agency on Aging, because I had recommended to Terry that I really felt that she needed to go for even a part-time case management position for seniors at the center. Just to have somebody over there. We don't have the room over in our building. It's small. I would love to have a part-time case manager over there. But there's no space. It's filled. But really who you need it for is seniors. Most individuals, young families, they have access to computers. They're capable of at least getting in the car and driving places and doing what they need to do. Seniors don't have that luxury at that point in their lives. And have somebody that's tuned into what they need when they come in or when they present to you, and you know that there's something that they're not going to be able to follow up with. We try as hard as we can over there, but we have hundreds of them coming in, and you're trying to keep track of who needs what, and we do it. But it would be nice if there was a case manager that, yes, we're taking in, we're doing all the stuff, we're following up on everything, but somebody just to make those calls, say, how are you doing? Is your tank full? Do you need us to call in? Do you need us to do this? Do you need us to do that? And I feel like a case manager, again, part-time. The director was saying she would like to see a case manager in every senior center in Connecticut if she had her way. Just somebody part-time and they have the grants for it. So all you have to do is go for a grant. But
When you said Terry before, did you mean our Terry?
yeah,
Terry
Terry
Buckley.
Buckley, yeah. I just feel like that is an essential part of a senior center.
They do an awful lot of ad hoc case management without
That-
calling it case management.
Exactly,
Right?
exactly.
Helping people with a variety of things over
Yes,
there.
they do.
So,
They do. And they
but
call,
formalizing.
and they do call me and we work on
Coordinate.
things. Yeah, we would do work on things together, but I feel like if there was somebody in her building with her, that could then contact social services and say, you know what, I have somebody here, I'm gonna make an appointment for them to come over and see you, and because they know what would be, and what that person is capable of, what our department's capable of at that point, what programs they can help them with, and then that case manager could also make those phone calls. Just like I work with the resident services coordinator, the resident services coordinator at the housing authority. Like I know that when they hired somebody there, that I can call them and there's certain case management, she can do the case management. I can guide her to do those phone calls so that I don't have to do them for every individual there. I just feel like that would be a plus. So
Thank you.
that's my
Who's that grant through?
area agency on aging.
Oh, okay.
We just got a report. The report they just issued.
Right.
Yeah, I've got a copy of it also.
Yeah. Actually, it'd be nice for retirement job for me, but
Do you think we do more than most towns for our seniors, less than most towns? for
I
our
think we
seniors,
do
or
a
medium?
lot, I think we do a lot for our seniors. But then again, I'm not in everybody's, I don't know. I think we do an awful lot for our seniors. I just feel like that's one piece that we could do a little bit more of, because we do have a lot of seniors. We, the shoreline in general, but Guilford particularly, there's this notion that we have, we're an affluent town and, we have everything we need. But when people age, there's a fragility that comes with that. That it's not just about the money, it's about their needs and how you set them up. So.
Wonderful. Well, Tammy, thank you very much for a thorough presentation.
Sure.
But then we also officially thank you for your many years of service. I won't say how many, but more importantly, thank you for your passion for serving our community, which is evident every time I have an opportunity to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tammy, don't say it's your last budget. Never know.
Just for everybody that's coming, we're about a half hour behind, but thank you all for being here. Next up is legal, budget 109.
Good morning, Counselor.
Morning, everyone. The hot seat.
Yes, it is.
You want me to just make a few opening comments?
Yep, please.
Okay, so you've got the this year's the proposed budget. I'll just run through the line items. Part-time salaries just up a little bit based upon the townwide increases. That's our staff person in the selectmen's office. General legal expense was 80,000. I'm moving that to 85 as a request. It was actually 90 the year before, 2022. We dropped it to 80, and I think that was probably a better number, frankly, there. Court stenographer, it covers not only a stenographer, but any records that we require or the record for proceedings. I'm increasing that because I think we're going to need it, not only for some zoning appeals we have, but the likely increase in assessment, tax assessment appeals.
Just a quick note on that. I'm showing 0 under for court stenographer for department request.
Right, it came through as 0, the court stenographer.
Okay, so that should be 2.
Well, it was 2. I thought I bumped that to.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 0 on ClearGov, but it's okay. You can,
That's somebody.
It's right here.
I'm pretty sure it's mine.
it's okay. It's okay. So we want that to be 4, is that what you're saying? You said you bumped it to
Yes,
4?
yes, that was the.
Okay, well, we can make that adjustment.
All right. Labor, all right, so I'm gonna kind of make a statement here that relates to court stenographer, and frankly, all of my line items. I do we do the best we can, but I never know when I'm gonna get a hot potato that just blows through a lot of money, and then sometimes we do very well. But this next item, labor, is one of those examples. If we end up successfully negotiating, I say we, really Mitch and Chris Hodgson, that do the negotiating. And if we do well in our negotiations, we'll be under that number. If we end up arbitrating or even mediating,
Right.
the expenses, that's not going to be high enough. We have several contracts coming up this year. So, I think that, I've generally looked at in a year where we do have some significant negotiations, I think 40 is a pretty conservative figure from our side. Hopefully, we're under that with successful negotiations. Judgment and losses is,
Just gonna,
Yeah,
let me
go
just go back to labor. If you take a look, the historical look at this,
Right.
it's cyclical in nature, right?
20.
Because contracts expire every 3 or 4 years, right? And you can see in 2020, our actual expenditure was $170,000 on contract.
How many do we have this year? Because I thought we were.
So
trying to phase-
Pete asked me that question off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure the police are up and the dispatchers are up. The GEA is up, but we're working on other ways of getting around that one. As I think the board of selectmen's aware. We're talking with them, that may help bring that down. But,
So are we working towards phasing them so we're not hit with peak years?
well, yeah, because it doesn't always work out the way you
No,
want it to,
right.
but yeah, we've got like one this year, the Teamsters this particular year. And so,
So that's still the plan.
yeah,
So
the
that
plans
we don't
keep
have
them
the
spread out.
peaks.
Yeah, as best we can.
To go to your point, Matt, though, 2020, what was the anomaly on that? Were there certain,
We had 4 unions reading.
it was,
Yeah,
right?
4 or 5.
I don't need to name them or anything. I'm just
One
curious.
of them went
If it's a
to,
cycle, is that, are we hitting a cycle of those particular, contracts coming up?
as Pete said, it really will just escalate tremendously when we go to arbitration. The cost of that are just astronomical when you go the full route. We've never gone the full route, but we've gone enough. Well, we did one time. We did. I'm sure it had to be the year. We had several, I'd say over half a dozen meetings with the arbitrators.
So for clarification, okay, for the fiscal year 2023, 24, how many contracts are we negotiating?
I believe there's 2 and possibly 3 because the GEA is kind of in flux right now. We're trying to work that through so that we won't have to get to that one.
Teamsters, though,
Teachers are this
in this budget.
this fiscal year. Yeah.
I think though, to get back to Mike's point, you were aware of those 5 unions at once and it was not a good thing and you've been trying.
Yeah, we try to spread them out. Yeah, with certain contracts, we made 3
Hopefully
years,
that
4
won't
years
happen
versus
again.
3.
Well, actually, that's what you were.
Yeah.
Yeah, spreading them out.
It is the plan whether it works or not. Sometimes you can tack on a year.
Tack on a year, which pushes things out, which is a good thing. But then what happens if you get a 4-year or 3-year, the stars align and all of a sudden you look at it and say, oh my God, they're all ending the same year. But anytime we are able to tack on a year, think about it, that's one more year that on that contract, one less negotiation to go through. So it's something we do look to, but most of the time, we look at a 3-year contract, sometimes 4, there's an occasional 5.
All right, Pete, sorry.
All right, then, no, that's fine. Judgment and losses, we keep it 5,000. Our insurance deductible is $10,000. So occasionally, we'll get into a position where there's a litigation threatened or some issue has arisen that we can handle ourselves, that we, so we would propose a settlement that would come back through here for approval, I assume, take it here. So that's in case that happens. We had one this year that came very close to, and the claim was withdrawn without having to make any payment. I'm sorry,
I
John.
have a question there too, Peter. Is that deductible apply to the suit against the Board of Education, or do we need any contingency there?
Yeah, well, all right, so the Board of Ed has their own legal budget, and they'll have that same deductible. There's a deductible for them too, under our coverage. So I think they'll probably address that in their budget. I don't know if they have a line item similar to this.
Okay.
Assessment reval. Okay, here's the one. Again, so we just had revaluation. We always get a big bump, not in the year of the reval. The litigation comes the following year. So, I will admit, this is best guess on it. And so we went back several cycles, back to 07. I appreciate Matt helping me with this. We talked about this. We've had years following reval that, I'll just give you 07, for instance, the years where it kicks in and you get the litigation, we spent 184, 225, 155.
Those are the 3 years after.
Yeah.
Those are the first year after reval went into effect.
Yeah, so the 07 reval, that 09 was 184, 10 was 225, 11, 155, and I won't go through all of them, but in 2012, we had a reval. The high year was 2015 at 186. And in 2017, which was our last reval prior to this one, we had in 2019, 188, and then 101, 89. So it goes down. The big year was the 2 years out, like now, would be now. So frankly, I used the 188. I used what the value was last time. We ended up paying.
I remember in that last cycle, I think that was my first term, and we looked at the cost benefit analysis of some of those struggles. I'm assuming we're continuing that type of analysis that, at some point, it makes sense to fight.
Yeah, the process, once somebody appeals, the process, as I think is, we had informal appeals. Formal appeals occur in March. If a plaintiff is, or a resident is unhappy with the decision on the Board of Assessment, then they can engage an attorney and they go to Superior Court. At that point, that case gets sent to our legal firm that's handling those cases, appeal cases, and they make an evaluation as to whether or not, how far we want to go, because we have to hire an appraiser, they have to hire an appraiser. If it's relatively close, they will make a.
When you start hiring appraisers, I mean, the dollar value is going to, it's now, and we are looking at that.
We look at.
Definitely analysis. We have an outside counsel that does it, and I stay in touch with him. And he speaks with the assessor. So any settlement is approved by our assessor. But the concern, as you might expect, is you don't want to have a reputation that everything gets settled.
Right.
But don't come, just make your
precedent.
You can't, you have to fight some of them, and the ones that need to be. And then once again, there you go with the costs. You have to hire and bring in your own appraiser. This record business, increased. There may be subpoenas and so forth.
And there is no way legally, I mean, if you have, I don't want to say outrageous, but, certainly cases that stretch the imagination, there is no way to recoup that cost.
No. Everybody pays their own attorneys, General Marion City on tax appeal. So, and that's what we face sometimes on all of these litigations. If someone just say, I can't believe they're not resolving this, but if they choose not to, it's my budget. So we do settle almost, most, the high.
I mean, I would think there is some dollar value where you just gotta shake your head.
No. And remember, the settlement that you make though goes out not just in the year you settle, because you're changing the assessed value. So you have to be careful. Gee, it's only X amount. Well, it's X amount for the next reval. So anyway, so that's where that number came from. Get back to my sheet here. General zoning matters, I increased too. Again, we have some appeals pending that are expensive. We have one now, actually two, that are kind of companions, and they're up in Hartford. So the complex zoning matters get transferred up to Hartford sometimes for hearings. And so that one's costing us some money, and it's not the only zoning deal we have. So I bumped that a bit. Contracted services is my in-house services, as you know, at town council, but I also do the purchasing function here. Most of it is done by our staff. And then the final numbers are, just permits, education. Education training is really for staff, not for me. Permits, dues, particularly where where I'm a member of the Connecticut Association of Municipal Attorneys, which is a great benefit. They have a listserv, and we swap information and issues. So, any questions, I'm glad to answer.
Yeah, I would just like to interject 2 points. We have some funds that we have been able to hold over from prior years that we haven't used.
Right.
I've looked those up. We have carried in force for assessment and reval,
Yep.
$21,000. And we have an outstanding purchase order for general legal expenses. 55,192 is left on that purchase order. If we were to apply both of those dollar amounts to this budget, it would bring the increase down to 24.7% as opposed to the 47% we are now, if we choose to apply those numbers.
Great, thank you. We had some money in reserve.
I have a question about the reevaluation, and sorry if I missed a beat when you were talking, but it sounded like you kind of were taking the worst case scenario, the worst year out of the
We
history.
look at I've been looking at the worst year, which is this year for 2 years out from the reval year.
Okay, do we have a lot of risk if we do a little bit of smoothing and say, maybe it won't be worst case scenario, but it's gonna be high? Some kind of middle ground?
We may smooth, but the expenses won't.
Right, it's either gonna happen or it's not. You're gonna get a lot of cases or not.
I think
Because
it's
that's why we went back to cycles where we actually show that significant increase in the fiscal year that starts the following July 1 from the.
Yeah, I follow you.
So that's the year that has, and we're using actuals, actual expenditures, not budgeted expenditures.
But 188 that wasn't the largest number.
No,
was it?
2 something.
It was 2 something.
No, we had 225 in 2010.
So we
So you
realized
kind
there's a
of
little bit of
split the
smoothing.
difference.
We had.
Oh, I thought it was the
No.
largest amount for this period after a reassessment.
No, it is.
Okay.
What we had done was we had taken, so we'd have an apples to apples comparison for the budget that we're preparing now. The budgets that were being prepared in those previous cycles following the application of the new grant list or the reval. So reval is October 1 of 2022. The first fiscal year that hits is 23-24. We went back 4 cycles, I think.
Darlene did that. How far back did you go, Darlene?
5.
I think it was 10 years, right?
Yes, yeah.
So three, at least 3
15.
cycles, right?
But I'll say this, though, and maybe this is what you put, Jonathan, is 07, for some reason, 09 was 184. And 2010 was 225, actually went up. So, sometimes we kind of generally think year 2, the year we're in is the big one, but sometimes it feels, the litigation's still going. So if the depots and the trials occur in that following year, it might even be higher. But I think the trend generally is year 2 is the highest, and then it comes down gradually. Unfortunately, it doesn't come racing down. Okay.
this,
Yep.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty good estimate. What you have.
this particular reval is very interesting because it was per Connecticut rules and everything. It was done in October of 2021, and we all know where the housing values were at that point. So there's a lot of, people that have questions and may take it further than questions.
And sometimes it depends on the results of the reval. If a lot of numbers are up, you get a lot of appeals. If it looks pretty, stable, you don't get as many.
So true.
And, the records, the record created by those sales is the record that a trial judge is gonna look at.
Yeah, they'll look at the.
They'll look at the comps, and that's really what it comes down to. Bad news, the state has changed their cycle. Everybody now has to be on the same cycle, so our next reval won't be 5 years from 2022, it'll be 4 years. So,
How many, Matt?
we're gonna be facing another reval in 2026 as opposed to
I
2027.
think Lou wanted you to repeat
Lou?
that.
No, I couldn't hear the number. I got you when you repeated it. Thank you.
Right.
Wow.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good
On the other hand, Matt, at least there'll be one less year of variability built in.
Maybe.
Yeah.
How's that for
No comment.
That wasn't my word.
Hey, you got this under control.
Yeah.
We could be right in the height of a recession.
But then the housing values show it, right? So the housing sale values. Next up,
Next up is town clerk. Oh. Number 102. Okay. Okay. I'm doing it again.
hi Anna.
Hi,
How are you?
good. Hi, I'm trying to keep it short and sweet. So there's not much change in mine, except for salaries, obviously, we'll increase there. No real change with anything. Advertising, I'm giving it a little more than last year because we were a little over last year. It's kind of hard to figure how many legal notices you're gonna have, and the price always increase, so put in a little extra for that. Copier went up slightly, but that was the finance office projection. Office supplies, I am asking for an extra $450 for a shredder. We do a lot of shredding in our office, vital, a lot of confidential stuff. And so right now, we're just taking a lot of stuff. We're running, every time we need to shred something, we have to take it upstairs to the shredder outside the finance office. And we did go over office supplies last year a bit. For the toner, we need a couple of toner cartridges a year, they're quite pricey. Paper, cost of paper, envelopes has gone up. Office equipment pretty much stays the same. Permits, dues, subscriptions. A little extra this year because I have one notary, their commission expires, so we'll need to renew that. And education and training, pretty much. And revenue, our revenue, pretty much, our fees aren't increasing, there's no fees that are increasing. All our fees are set by the state of Connecticut, so we pretty much do the same, about the same for dog license. We usually, that stays the same. Notary, shellfish licenses, pretty stable. Recording fees, hard to judge. Obviously, 2021, we were way up in recording, so that's starting to come down a little bit.
We just did that in the current year, so that
Yeah,
increase is
yeah,
already seen
yeah,
in the current
yeah.
year's budget.
Right. Conveyance taxes, while the number of sales has decreased a little bit, the actual sales prices are still very high. So the amount that we're taking in for conveyance is still up there. So hopefully that will, continue to bring us some good revenue there. Pretty much it.
Any questions?
So I just have one question. It seems like the revenue's pretty conservative compared to the 22 actuals. We just kind of expect
Well,
it to go
yeah,
down a little this year?
I'm expecting it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's unrealistic to think that it's going to continue the way that it has the last couple of years.
Okay.
So, if it is increased, that's great. And, a little bonus for us, but I just kind of wanted to be a little more conservative there and not,
Well, you
not
probably
get your
got a better
hopes
feel
up.
for it than anyone.
Yeah.
Totally from talking to the real estate, the housing market has cooled significantly, interest
yeah.
rates being what they are.
Yeah.
And lack of inventory.
Yeah,
But the concern I have is the reverse. We're 6 months through the year and you are less than 50% collected on your revenues. You're at 400,000
Yeah.
against 900, so you're
Yeah.
about $50,000 short. So
yeah,
938 is in fact an increase over the fiscal 23 budget, which we estimated to be 911, and we may be challenged to get to that number
Yeah.
already.
yeah.
So anything else? Anyone else? Going once? Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. I told it to be short and sweet.
Next is Registrar of Voters 108.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
So the overall budget from last year has gone up almost 20,000.
And our budget just really circles around election events. Last year was at a low, this 24 year, which will include the presidential primary. So we, as I go by line item, we'll talk about how each one has increased. The part-time salaries, I don't have the correct figure for that, but it will be slightly more. The poll worker salary that has increased from last year because of the events that will be coming up starting July 2023 for November and a possible primary, and then the presidential primary. Now, that is poll workers, whatever election event it is. And the minimum wage is now $15 an hour. And we have packed our 5 polling stations with as many as we can to accommodate the flow of people going into each polling place. So that's why there's that big increase this year. Referendum, we have budgeted for 1, and that has gone up slightly. Canvas, which is our annual January send out letters to make sure our voting list is up to date. And we also subscribe through them a monthly letter that the post office supplies us that people have moved. So we want to, even monthly, we keep our voter registration rolls up to date. Primary, that is for both the primary. Now, when we talk about the primary and November election, that doesn't have wages in there. That's just balloting, testing of the machines. That's not salaries. November election expense, travel and expenses. We haven't really used it before because mostly everything was Zoom, but our 2 register voters seminars we go to, that would include travel getting there. Service contract, that is for our machines when the maintenance comes in May or June for them. Copier lease, that number is supplied to us by finance. Office supplies, which is minimal, whatever we need. Office equipment, we need a new binding machine, ours broke, and that's for the checker books that when you come in, you give your address and your name, and that checks off. Permits, dues, and subscriptions, and education and training, which is their county meetings and our state meetings twice a year. I think maybe that covers it all. Okay, any questions? Early voting has not come into this because I have no idea what's going to happen. But my thought is it's mainly for salaries to maintain whatever, it's 5 days early, 2 weeks early, whatever they say at hopefully 1 polling place. It's all up to what Hartford says. And I'm not sure how we're going to receive the ballots. I'm thinking maybe there'll be a new receptacle to put the ballots in, which would mean, money. Hopefully the state can provide that for us. So at this point for early voting, I'm just guessing 10 days of someone manning the ballot area.
If the presidential primaries are in June this year.
The presidential, it's usually March, but I heard they're trying to push it. No, it's usually April. I heard they're trying to push it to March. By the time it gets to Connecticut, who cares?
Depends. Right.
That's all right.
It's usually over by then.
A lot of people.
Yes.
feel that way, yeah. So March would help a little bit.
True. So that'll be March 24th. Good. Any questions?
Gloria?
Gloria, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you for your time.
Next up, we have the building department, 111.
Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Good morning.
I'm Kimberly Norman Rosedam. I'm the building official for the town of Guilford for the building department. And I'm here to talk about my expenditures. Pretty much my expenditures are the same. The main uptick is with the salaries for, there was an increase for myself and also for a new hire position, which would be for a building permit technician. One of the reasons why I'm asking for this position is because of the increase of permits that we're getting within the last, from 2020, 2021 to 2022, has been an increase of double from the previous years. I actually submitted an Excel spreadsheet to show the increase regarding it. And we, in the building department, have even had other departments help out with their administrative assistants, that we even gave an employee recognition award to 2 of them for helping out so much. And even with that increase of help out, we still need more help. We even increased our administrative assistants for my admin who works at home, Michelle Simone. I also had a person that was working 20 hours a week, Nancy, who would end up leaving in December for another higher paid position. She worked 20 hours. And I also have Samara Hawk, who works for engineering, but also for building, increased her hours to 5 hours to 40 hours a week, because so much work. And we're still not able to handle everything. So a building permit tech position would be a higher position than an admin. And they would know a lot more regarding the building department process. They'll know how to do fees. They'll know how to do a bit of, I would say, drawings regarding square footage to help out clients when they come before us at the counter. A lot of them don't actually know what it means, and with our fee schedule that we have. That was enacted in 2018, the increase. So that will help out the contractors and the homeowners regarding it. And this permit tech will have to be licensed, like I am with the ICC, and they will have to take classes. One of the classes is also zoning, to know part of our ordinance. So that will also increase the helping out with other departments, as well as zoning, engineering, and also health. So this would be a very valued position to actually streamline not only the income, but also the process for the other reviewers like myself and the other departments to get permits out there so we can get production and development going in the town of Guilford.
So is it 20 hours that you're asking for?
Well, I would like for my department to be 40 hours.
Oh, you're asking for a full-time position?
But a full-time position for my department. For right now, we are 35 hours. But I'm just stating, but a lot of the time right now, people, the administrative system, they've been 40 hours.
But this new position, the permit technician, how many hours is that?
35 right now.
So it's a full-time position at 35.
Yes.
If that were to happen, would some of those extra hours that the other people you just named, would there be a little savings offset on some of those people?
Yes, I believe it'll be a little bit of a decrease. But what I am predicting regarding the increase of work, it may even go back up, to be honest, because we're gonna be really slammed coming spring and summer. We really are.
I mean, not to get ahead of things, but if you look at the revenue side, there's just such a large increase again predicted. And if you look going back to 2020, the increase in revenue is way more than the increases in expenses over that period.
Yeah.
So we're bringing that in, somebody has to do the work.
Yeah, because I'm working
Look at that
80
rate
plus hours a week, to keep everything going, keep everything on top.
Is the, I'm not, you're undergoing some changes in technology support for the permits. Is that gonna ever, is there some kind of,
We are trying to get Integra introduced, which is a software database system, programming database system. That will help out, but it won't really help out as much because right now people come in, because we're paper-based. People come in, they fill out their permit and so on, and they go through it. Even though if we have the database system, we're still gonna be dealing with them. It's just gonna be another way. We're gonna be dealing with them on the phone. You know, it'd be more of a phone thing if they're applying on the software. And if they don't include everything, we still have to contact them. We still have to let them know what's is correct that they submitted and what wasn't, and what else additional information we're gonna need. So it's still gonna be the same. We're still gonna be, it's still gonna be contact, whether in person or on the phone.
It almost seems like, you know, the new systems, you would hope that they not only would be digital and that type of thing, but the permitting process would have been streamlined, but it almost sounds like all it is changing it from paper to digital, but not streamlining the process.
No, the process is the same. It requires all kinds of approvals. It's the workflow that's created once the document hits the system, whether it's in paper or electronically.
Well,
The
that's what I was
workload
hoping.
on the backside still remains the same.
I mean, ideally, you would hope that the permitting process would be streamlined to the point where, you know, you're not sitting there calculating square footage. I mean, that seems like a fairly automated process.
Well, part of it would be able to do that, but there's still some of the items that we would need regarding documentation. Especially from my end, make sure it's code compliant, that we would still have to go back to the client to even state, these are some extra things that we would need, or these are some things that I don't see that's on your plans, that I need to know what you're gonna be doing to make sure it's code compliant.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with, you know, I was hoping, you know, I'm sure there's more regulations, so it's one would be offset, but I was hoping that it was, you know, streamlined to the point where it's checklists and you don't get to submit that application until everything's checked.
No, it's not that automation yet.
We're not there yet.
No, yes.
Hey, Kim, Matt, can I jump in?
Yeah, Lou.
So, most jobs and most, workflow bottlenecks are sort of follow the 90-10 rule. In other words, like 10% of the actual work consumes 90% of everybody's energy, right? What's that situation here? I mean, is there one particular thing that's breaking down the workflow, or is it a combination of things? Can you give us some insight on what's driving this need?
The need was always there.
Well, that
The
doesn't
need was
answer
always
it.
there, because even back when George Goodovin was the building official and so on, there has always been 3 administrative assistants assisting the building department. So there's never have been a breakdown. It's always been there. It's just that the administrative assistant has just been overloaded this whole time.
So it's administrative work.
It's most administrative work, and this work is also going to be able to help out a lot of the department heads to actually do the reviews also.
At one point, Lou, we had a building official and an assistant building official, right? As you might
Sure,
recall,
I remember.
and 3 admins supporting supporting that operation. That was
Okay.
ruled down a couple of years ago when George Goodovin retired. Bill Thody took over. They did not replace Thody's position. As you may recall, of late, we are utilizing part-time building
Yeah,
officials.
I thought we were contracting out on it.
Right, we
Yeah.
are, which brings up the question, I don't see it on here. Is it, where is it?
Part-time.
Part-time?
They're not,
Part-time
con-
salary.
Part-time,
yeah,
okay.
they're not contracted, Lou, they're
Yeah.
part-time employees.
Oh, okay. That's
Of which
interesting.
we've got a couple openings right now. So we're down in that area too.
How
Mitch,
many do you have now, if I could ask?
I actually had 4 last year, but one ended up retiring. So right now I have a currently of 3.
3 admins?
Yeah, but
No, you mean admins, or you talking?
I just been all staff actually, but
Oh, I thought you meant the building official.
Maybe Mitch can
This
go
is-
through
this
the
is
list.
Sure,
too,
so,
as well.
so the
Mitch has it on.
the building department currently consists of Kim, you know, as your building official, Michelle Samo as the administrative assistant, and then she's asking for another full-time person, you know, as the permit technician. Those would be your full-time employees. Then part-time, we had a part-time administrative assistant that's left, and that's part of Kim's reasoning for going to this permit technician. And we have 1, 2, 3 assistant building officials. Currently, one just left and there was still one open. So we have positions for 5, of which 3 have been filled right now. And I'll be advertising shortly to try and once again fill those other positions.
And the respective hours that they each work.
So you're all familiar with George Godovan. He is 880 hours a year. 3 of them were for 350 a year and the one other one for 700 a year.
Break that back down at 7.5 a week for a couple of those guys, right? And
Yeah.
George is double that, right?
Yeah.
George is 2 days a week.
Yes, yes.
Considering what's on the books, which is right now, we're looking at 3 major developments that I know. Plus, it's a couple of vacancies and whatever. Is our thought process of last year of utilizing part-time as building officials there, I guess is the title at that point. Is that still hold or should we be rethinking that?
We've had those discussions whether we go full-time. The challenge there is there's a dearth of building officials statewide.
Well, I know, but if we don't get in the queue.
Right, but, and also there are varying needs with levels of expertise. George Godovan is exceptionally well-versed in the commercial stuff, and that's basically all he does. So the question there is, and George is post-retirement age, because he already retired from this job, right? And we're not sure how much longer he's going to be working for us, but he's welcome to work as long as he wants at this point.
Exactly.
So the conversation was that, three part-timers at 8 hours and one at 16 hours is basically a full-time job, right? So we had talked about looking at rolling it into a full-time position, which would include
I mean,
benefits.
you can't look at it as
contribution.
personnel. I mean, you're right with George and the others, we're in a unique situation where it's working because of the personnel. My
Exactly.
question is,
Expertise.
are we, well, it's not like it.
Yeah,
So that
we
answers my
are.
question. It's just that at some point in time, maybe we could find that ideal person.
That's what we had actually talked about this last year at budget time. We said, at
That's
what
what I'm
point is it
saying.
gonna make sense? Same question Jonathan asked about the police and fire, right? At what point does it make sense to add a full-time position here? And when you do that, you obviously have to do salary and loaded costs, which what's the loaded factor these days? 30%?
Now more than that, probably 50%.
Yeah, the loaded factor.
Can I jump back in when you're done?
What's that, Lou?
Can I jump in when you're done?
Yes.
Okay, so, this is really interesting that we have part-time. I thought those guys were contractors, and I get it. They're part-time employees. They're not reflected on the website for whatever that's worth. But if they're working for the town as part-time employees, it seems to me at a minimum they should. I kind of had it sort of crossed up a little bit. I'm sure anybody who looks at this would have that same problem. If we're sort of in a full-time permanent mode to find another essentially full-time person, why we wouldn't have that request on this building department website is, one of those communication things that I imagine would be sort of helpful. If we're looking for somebody, we should be telling the world we're looking for somebody and start filling them in.
Reality is, Lou, we are not looking for someone right now.
But I mean, I thought I'm hearing you say we have 2, if not 3 at times, part-timers, and it would be better to have another full-timer.
That is part of the analysis that we are undertaking, and given the unique nature of the skill sets that exist in the our part-time employees now, we are willing to continue this role. And
right.
we were just talking about, yes, it is a consideration.
Right.
But at this point, we have not made the decision to move forward with consolidating the part-timers into a full-time role.
Okay, I mean, and I get it. I'm not, as to use Charles' phrase, not looking to micromanage the communication line, but the fact that those guys are working for us, at a minimum, that sort of organizational chart should be reflected on here. And it would sort of be helpful for everybody to understand who's doing what and why. And if there's only that one admin person exclusively for building, that and the amount of stuff that there's 4 people really, or 3 or 4 people that one person is reporting to, it does sort of make a little bit more sense. This request makes a little more sense contextually.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Lou, I was just questioning if it was time to revisit the decision. I wasn't, advocating for changing the decision. It was something we discussed and went forward with last year, and the logic still holds. And I just asked that the question be.
I have a question, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to follow along, but if you were to get this new building tech, would that be an offset with some of these part-time people? And is that
No, that-
reflected in these numbers?
Yeah, the part, the building officials? No, that's totally different.
No,
it's
he has
supporting
to have
those people.
the
Permit
Will the
technician.
new permit technician
I'm sorry,
offset
permit
some of the people that
The
currently?
only thing it would offset, Jonathan, is the fact that Kim did lose a 20-hour position person. So she was behind anyway with the 20-hour position. She's explained in a lot of detail why a permit technician is even better than just another admin. It's a step up from the admin position. And it would be full-time. So we're not backfilling that 20 hours, but we'd be adding in a full-time person who's going to take on larger responsibilities.
I think Jonathan's question was the tech be able to do some of the work that the part-time
Right,
building
but it also-
inspectors do? And they
Oh.
can't.
No.
Maybe more than that. I was wondering from a salary perspective, if you hired the new person, if that would eliminate some costs for the part-time people. That was the question.
No,
It sounds like no.
The reason is no, because
Just want to actually.
there's a
pull in
certification.
Another person.
There's a certification required to be a building official. There is not a similar certification required for this part-time tech. It is a different role, different job. They do
Okay.
not go out and do building inspections.
I'm here back if I have one other thing.
Yes, Lou.
Jonathan, you all set? I don't want to
Yeah.
jump on your toes remotely. So again, I may sound like a broken record here today, but some sort of organizational chart of what the optimal setup would be really helpful for me, I suspect for other people. And also what sort of the proverbial dashed lines to the other admin in that department would be also helpful to visualize who's doing what, why, and what support they give each other. Because it's never been particularly clear to me down there.
So Lou, if I read you correctly, you'd like to see an organizational chart for all of Town Hall South and how they interact.
Certainly for this department, in as much we're looking to hire this, I'll call it a paraprofessional position. Sort of sounds like it's above a basic admin, but below the full bill. There's a sort of an intermediate thing, which makes a lot of sense, and maybe that's cheaper, and I get it. But how that fits into what this department is doing and how they relate to the other departments, yes, MJ, I guess without creating a massive project, it would be helpful to see who's doing what and who's helping each other and why.
May I? Yeah, I mean, I would just like to address that question, Lou, and just say that the Planning and Zoning Department fully supports this new permit technician. In the about 11 months that I've been with the town and I've sort of witnessed Town Hall South processes, particularly when it comes to our Historic District Commission or our historic resources, there needs to be building and zoning need to be in lockstep. And we need that extra sort of oomph of somebody who knows a little bit more about all the other departments and can do that collaboration and coordination.
And that's helpful. And I'm not disputing this argument that's being laid out here.
No,
is-
meant to
is-
offer some feedback.
It's good for us. Other people are wondering how we're spending the money and why. And if this makes sense, it makes sense, but we should be in a position to be able to explain it.
I think this comes back to the question that I asked earlier when you were talking about you were grabbing 5 hours from X and Y. And I asked if the permit technician full-time would alleviate some of those, but then it's not going to alleviate the need for the contractual building inspectors. But
Right.
it kind of comes back to what Lou is saying. It's hard to understand. I mean, I guess we're looking to see, is there any offset of savings against the new expenditure, for the permit technician against where you were saying you were kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul there. And that was what I was trying to.
Well, I'll state it like this. With the building permit technician position, it's going to help out to extreme the flow regarding the work process in the building department, not only for building, but also for zoning and all the other departments. Now, will it alleviate or save some savings on the extra 5 hours? Added on for for Sam, who works for myself, and also for the town engineer, which has always been the case for many years, okay? Will that 5 hours go away? I don't think so, because the amount of work we're gonna be getting within the, spring, summer, and so on, I believe it's gonna stay. That's, and the 5 hours that my current admin works, Michelle, Simone, I believe that's also gonna stay too. Because of the amount of work that we are receiving and the work that's going to be happening, I am actually proceeding regarding that.
I don't.
Sure.
I don't wanna spend too much time, but you did say that in the technology field, that the programs and stuff that, because we've made some investments down in Compound South. In technology, and now we're redoing zoning code and all those types of things. I know that you said that our programs now would streamline the process enough. Out there, are there programs that are available that would?
Are there other programs that would streamline what? Which area are you
The
speaking?
permitting process.
The permitting?
In other words, it seems like a lot of it, the time was chasing permits, making sure that they're complete, that type of thing. Are there programs out there that would, that do that for different communities?
Well, right now, I believe the one we have contracted with is one of the best ones that majority of the
That's
towns have.
exactly what the answer I needed to know, so that our investment in technology has been in the right direction.
Oh, yes,
We've just caught up to technology.
right.
We're still in the development and implementation phase of that technology, so we don't know the full benefits. The most important pieces of this are streamlining the entry point to that whole enclave over there, right? Simplifying it for potentially for an applicant.
That's why I just want to make sure that the direction and investment we made.
But more importantly, streamlining the process flow in the building so that when a permit comes in, if it is intact, there is a workflow associated with that. It goes to zoning, it goes to health, it goes to, if necessary, if the permit requires it, it goes to engineering. And that workflow is all done electronically. So today it's your turn, your turn, your turn, your turn.
And the question I was simply asking is that, and I understand it's a work in progress and changes are in the midst. I just want to make sure that we're on the right track.
I believe we are. We're getting pretty close to finalizing the permit applications themselves and the design of those. And then we've already identified what the appropriate workflows, the necessary workflows throughout the office. And it is designed also to catch things like, oh, this one sat in my in basket for a month because I didn't see it, right? And I hate to admit it, but it happens.
Oh, yeah.
It happens, right? So,
You can never replace the judgment that these unique applications require.
that's right.
So
Yeah,
streamline the
I'd like to
process.
throw a different hat on.
Sure.
And based on what I know, you want Guilford to be, friendly when it goes through, when things go through the process of whether it's design or construction. I won't necessarily mention the city I work in, for those that do or don't know, but the struggles of working in a municipality that does not have a good process. There's a human component. You could have all the technology you want, but that technology only gets you on the, basically it gets you through recording. Okay, it's recorded properly, but at the same time, you have to be going through a process where, yeah, there's a box and they check and say, okay, it's your turn to look at it on a computer screen rather than a piece of paper, but it's still got to be reviewed. A computer and technology can't say you meet code. So when that process is delayed and you try to tell a client, on my side, it's going to take 6 to 8 months for you to get a building permit, that is unacceptable.
Exactly.
It's
And
interesting.
and Guilford is not like that. It's getting better. And I heard something, I just want to make sure I heard. How many hours do you say you work a week?
Probably between 60 and 80 I was doing. Yeah.
All right, let's take that into consideration.
Yeah.
That's part, there's also, somebody working 60, 80 hours.
For the
I know
record,
people that do that,
Kim
that's not
is an
sustainable.
exempt employee.
That's not sustainable.
this is being recorded. But that would, I do have to question.
But you have to.
You know, I know what your profession is and that's an interest, and I'm supportive of, you know, human factor and all that. I just want to make sure that we're on the right track. But that's an interesting statement that you made in that technology cannot tell you if you're in compliance or not. And I just, you know, that would be an interesting goal. I would think that would be a fundamental easy.
That's a layer,
You
that's a
wouldn't need
layer of art,
architects
that's a
anymore.
layer of artificial intelligence that you'd have to overlay.
Yeah.
Look at a building plan, that, an electronically submitted building plan. You need to overlay a layer of artificial intelligence that matches building codes to the plan and whatever the
That's what
engineer.
technology is.
Well, those,
Someday.
yeah, someday, you're right, you're right.
God, I hope not.
Yeah, then you guys are out of it.
I was.
Okay.
Does it exist?
All right, so we've got a couple of notes coming off of this, one of which is a better delineation of the relationship of the departments over in Town Hall South, as well as an org chart to say who works for who this day, who works for who on that day, or you know, what resources are dedicated to an organization, which resources are shared. And then maybe even overlay on top of that, what it would look like with this new individual on board.
They'd be working 100 hours.
No,
I'm gonna need their help on
Yeah,
that.
Mitch is
I don't even know who's going which way over there.
Anything further on building? Kim, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Could we take a?
Sure.
minute, real quick?
You get.
I got it. Okay.
Tracy, can you shut off the recording?
Go back. Right. Next up is natural resources. Kevin.
All right, for natural resources, we have
What's our number?
118,51,000.
There we go. Got it.
Before Kevin starts, I'd just like to note that there's an additional contracted services line for 25,000, which adds to Kevin's budget. He'll go through that, but the time he put his budget into ClearGov, that account number didn't exist, so it's missed from our printouts, but he will discuss that as we move forward.
Okay, which number?
118.
Thank you.
Okay, Kev.
All right, so salaries, we have full-time salaries for myself and my administrative assistant, Michelle Miserio. These were all contractual and changed due to the contractual rates. Similar with board and commission secretaries. There's one for conservation, there's substitute for the wetland, scenic roads, tree advisory, all on my list of board secretaries. We have a new one here, as it's been discussed here, is overtime services for my administrative assistant, Michelle Miserio.
And just, that means not real time and a half, right?
Correct, that's straight time
The
there,
overtime here means just going from
Between
35 to
35 to 40.
40 there.
Mhm.
And this is mostly due to her evening meetings. Extend her hours several times a month there.
Mitch, wasn't that rolled into the job description at one
Was
point?
rolled into the job description, remains in the job description. What Kevin has explained to me, and I'll let him talk about it, is that the amount of time that then becomes taken off for comp time works against somebody being in the office during the day. So he's requesting a 5-hour additional, like most of the Town Hall South department heads are speaking to today, additional 5 hours overtime, straight time during the week for administrative assistants.
Yeah, comp time is that there's no way for them to take that comp time that same week, because there's duties they have to do for the next 2 days following it. So we have expense and travel, that haven't really changed for years. That's if I have to go somewhere up to Hartford or something like that, I have to pay for parking at certain locations. Geographic systems, that's pretty well stable. Some money's been moved out here into IT for all licenses and stuff related to our computer systems. Slight increase with
Kevin,
MS4 compliance.
Before you leave, GIS.
Yep.
I know there's been some discussions about changing the platform, or enhanced platform that, planning and zoning is looking at for.
So there's more hosting fees, because they require additional users and stuff.
Okay.
So all those additional hosting fees through Azure are the things that are being picked up on within the IT
Yeah, you'll see that in
budget
IT.
there.
Okay, thank you.
How about the converted files? Is that all behind us at this point?
File conversion within the town hall south environment there, still ongoing process there. Wetlands was recently done. We're actually going through quality control, the stuff again through for wetlands. But there's like subdivision files are still within the counties which need to be scanned in. And there's plenty of zoning files which weren't scanned in as part of the past conversions that we've done. So there's still, we've been slowly scanning in property maps and stuff like that. We get mapping from the
But all the new applications.
all the new
require
applications
digital-
are provided to us in a digital format.
Do you have any feel, I mean, it's been a long time that we've been discussing this. Is there any?
Going on 10 years with this whole thing.
Oh, at least. Is there any feel for what we're gonna be up to speed and completed? I mean, it's another
Would-
10 years?
We're getting information in there.
No, getting everything converted.
Well, that means, right now we're doing a change of software for that we've been using for our permitting, which was just discussed. We're changing from a Munis
So I'm talking
program
about converting as a file so that
The scanning.
to scanning of documents within the office.
Yeah.
That's now, now we had a project budget years ago for that. I'm not sure. I think that's been closed out. So each department with their own records would need to get proposals for that and come in front of you guys for what needs to be
so
done.
you're
But
saying
there's
it's not even ongoing at this point in time?
correct.
How about maps?
I get subdivision maps I have sent in, and that's what we utilize to change the GIS property layer. So those
But
are
how-
the property boundaries, and those are, and then as part of my process here, which is in my budget for wetlands easement mapping, that's the project I'm working on right now, is getting the updated wetlands map, getting all the wetlands boundaries from all these previous
Okay, so
subdivisions and stuff.
after
scanned in.
wetlands, what else is left?
Like there's planning and zoning files. And then
Files, but including maps?
including maps from that.
So you don't really have a prognosis? Might be.
I would say a couple, it depends how, with staffing wise, which can then categorize the stuff and then send it out
Worst
to.
case scenario.
I would say comfortably within 5 years,
Have everything.
we could, if there's a program put together, get stuff sent in.
You say could if. Is that included in your budget that we are ongoing, what we can?
That's not part of my JS budget. That would be a capital budget request by the departments or as a unit from Town Hall South.
Is that a goal? Is it a necessary goal?
It's been a goal we've been looking at, and then we've been having a bunch of staff changes, so things have been, they've been learning what's been going on in the office, so these functions have been,
But do you think the fact that it's been delayed for various reasons has affected the productivity at Town Hall South?
no, because those records here, it's the public side, and that we haven't gone to a public front program yet, for them seeing what our files are in the office. So those are stuff in the office that we, instead of kind of punching up on the computer, you walk into a back room and you pull up the map and you actually physically have the map in your hands. So staff wise, it's not really effective to us yet, affecting us yet. But something for us to have available for the public. And That's what we're looking for, and also to get the stuff out of Calmex and in Munis where you actually have one spot you're looking versus, oh, I can't find it here, now I need to go hunt it down within the office.
So I think that's a conversation we need to have because we had a large scanning project. I guess I have erroneously assumed that that large project was complete and had brought us up to date, and now we're scanning new stuff in.
As it comes in.
If that is not the case, then we need to revisit that.
Okay, I think that's where I was going. I had this concept that, we paid for it, we did it, and,
And I,
okay. that's
like I
good.
said,
All right, I didn't
made
want
an
to
assumption that that had brought us up to date, and obviously that doesn't sound
Now
like
we're-
it's correct.
I think we're halfway through that proposal we had 4 or 5 years ago there.
Okay,
And
well,
then
we'll
things
need to
got-
revisit
And
that.
things got slowed down with COVID and everything else.
Is
within
there
the
one
office.
department head who's theoretically in charge of making sure it happens or the ongoing carrying out of it? Is that you?
I started it up, and then worked with the previous department head.
I think you're right, we gotta revisit.
Definitely, we'll just, I'm not sure. it-
Gotta
it-
finish,
it-
gotta finish the project and start.
Yep, absolutely, we will.
Good. All right, Kevin, sorry to sidetrack you here.
That's right. It's all in the general larger conversation we've been having all morning here. So that was, I think I covered most everything in GIS services there. Advertising, we increased that budget. It's been, office has been getting busier in terms of applications and stuff there. Looking at my current line item for that, I think I'm at getting close to actually the current budget number 6 months into my budget. So that's why I doubled it going in now. The new one, which is not reflected in your paperwork there, is the contracted services. This is for the lake manager to help with consulting lake manager for Lake Quantapug. We talked about this one during the discussions with the capital budget. And it was requested that I place that into the regular operating budget versus having that a capital budget item, since this would be a yearly fee or yearly type service there.
And would you describe that again, what that person would be doing?
Okay, so this person would be assisting myself, Conservation Commission, with the management of Lake Quantapug in terms of helping with the permitting, helping with notification of work being conducted there, overseeing the contractor when it's out there, making sure he's doing what we're asked to and follow up with the treatments out there. Even verifying we're doing the right, helping us verify we're doing the right treatment and maintaining the correct schedule for treatment on the lake there.
So this is,
And then also performing water testing of the lake to make sure phosphorus and pH and nitrogen and all those chemicals or those levels are at safe balances, so we're not getting algae blooms and those.
This would be
other
a
type of-
company that would do it?
I'm looking at a company to do that. They have broader staff in there, so you, instead of, you might not have one person which has all the needs of this position there, where they within the company would have somebody which maybe at a lower rate have somebody out to go water sampling, and then have a higher level person which helps with the permitting and stuff there.
And all these things are done by you now?
A lot of this coordination we haven't gone into the water testing that came out of the report that the commission recently got in December, that we should also be looking at water sampling for sources of contamination into the lake, where high silt levels may be coming into the lake there. Checking the clarity of the lake for making sure we don't get algae blooms there, which goes into recommendations and for further treatments there. But the permitting and coordination of all the other work that, yeah, stuff I've been doing there, between just coming out of Christmas break, within 3 days, ended up throwing together a grant for the treatment of the lake. Which took basically full time away from other duties and just focus into that, and then building permit reviews, all that type of stuff kind of got pushed off the side so I can meet that deadline. And then there's follow-up reports at the end of these grants and stuff that always has to be done with also.
Okay.
Kevin, with respect to the lake manager, so to speak, we had conversations together with Friends of Lake Quantified.
Yep.
Are they at all, they have any skin in the game on this? They are all the budding property owners benefit from the quality of life.
Yeah, this person would be coordinating with them, talking with them, finding out what their interest might be in.
We're talking money.
That's right. You're talking about-
Well, they're always talking, they always want more, and, yeah, but
Well,
but they would be, like I said, sort of that, public relations and also with the lake management.
Right. And in addition, Choate had for years made a contribution towards
Yep.
treatment and the work on the
Yep.
lake. That's still ongoing?
That's still ongoing, and we did get, 2 payments, by invoices, this past summer.
So
How's that built in here? Is that offset against your budget somewhere?
It comes in
Yeah.
through the grant fund, so it's not reflective in the general budget.
So does this contracted services of 25,000 supplant or replace the 20,000 that we've been spending every year for treatment?
That's just treatment. I mean, our treatment is based on a report that we had, management plan, we need to do more treatment. We actually,
Increase
they
that
tripled that
yeah.
budget.
You'll see that in the capital, yeah.
So, I mean, if you're looking at treatment of the lake itself, this year, you're probably looking at close to $100,000. Because we're looking at about $60,000, actually about $85,000. I think it was $60,000 for the treatments and stuff like that required to hopefully get a hold of the lake, because we've been holding things steady where they're not really spreading too much. But the reports recommended that we go to different herbicides, which have better acting, which increase the cost there.
Right, so, I've asked this question, I asked this of Friends of Lake Quantified. Are we chasing nature in this thing? This,
The drought issue?
the lake itself is changing, right, over time. And are we, we're investing, we have invested money in this, and now we're talking about maybe $100,000 a year to try to fight nature.
What we're sort of chasing out, which we want to do, we're trying to suppress, is the invasive weeds which dump along that lake, which push out the native plants. And that's the goal that we've been going after. We came with a compromise with the southern end of the lake, which has lily pads, which aren't really considered the aquatic invasive, non-native invasives in there. But we maintaining the center passageway where people can kayak and boat so that end doesn't get strangled out and basically become a wetlands.
Yeah, and are there other lakes that are facing challenges similar to this, that there may be an expectation that the town participates in remediating?
Other lakes in town?
Yeah.
This is all the other ones of our knowledge are up.
Private lakes?
This one, this is sort of a, Lake Quantified is one of those lakes where we say the responsibility is a state lake, and the state looks at us and says, no, it's a town lake, because we have the dam on the bottom of it, and it's a bunch
I'm
of
just gonna bring up, isn't there a
just going there.
jurisdiction issue here? Has that's not been resolved at this point?
That would require a big title search, like to determine.
Well, I guess my question is, I don't know.
And that's
it's an
what I mean.
appropriate conversation right now, but do we want it? Do we want jurisdiction, or, would we be, could we potentially be better off if it were state, but then we did lose control?
We'll probably lose some control there, and the grant I just put in with the state for treatment of the lake is I went with a 50-50 grant. Saying the town will cover 50% of the cost of the treatment of the lake, and the state, through the grant program, will pay 50% treatment of the lake. Fingers crossed that
Let's sleep.
and hopefully that 60,000 we're looking at, if we get the grant, goes down to 30.
But back to the Friends of Lake Quantified, do they raise funds or have any funds that they could possibly not contribute something towards this new $25,000 expense, since it does benefit their properties?
They've basically been pushing us for increasing funding there, but we can, I guess, see what we can
Is there?
They're a quasi organization, so they don't really take in,
It's an association,
they're not an association, they're just kind of a,
loose group, affiliated friends.
yeah, they're,
Is there any program for, I mean, the basic plans comes from somewhere. Is there any program for controlling the boat launch there as far as?
well, that's a big issue with the state, is that they don't really have, like, I mean, you go out of like New Hampshire, Maine and stuff like that, a lot of these state boat launches there, there's a state employee there which makes sure that that boat comes out. There's a hose there which makes sure that boat gets hosed off, all the stuff that's on it gets flushed back in that spot there, so they're not taking weeds from our lake and placing it in Candlewood Lake and vice versa.
It's the lake I'm on, we pay for it. But we are mandated to have somebody there, so many hours a day.
So yeah, that's, I mean, Connecticut's lake program is non-existent really. And it's, I said, probably creating the problems and it's costing the state money with all these weeds being traveling between all these different lakes and all this money put out there now to try to catch up with all the damage.
At the sake of prolonging this, the contractor, the lake manager, would they have any enforcement capabilities in terms of pesticide applications and stuff for those around the lake, which, you know, for many of these people, they're the ones that are damaging the lake with what they, I don't mean it, that's a blanket accusation. They may be damaging the lake inadvertently by putting down things on their lawn, et cetera, that are not necessarily healthy for the lake. So do we envision that this would have a set of protocols and is there any enforcement for what they could do?
They would be assisting with the public outreach. I mean, Friends of Lake Quantico actually just came out with a, Nathan draft, but I'm not sure if it's made it to full publication yet, of a flyer which is going to all the people around the bay, the lake, of indicating proper living around the lake and things you should be doing as a resident around the lake there. We're pushing buffers and other type of activities to help with, like I said, pesticides from then flowing into the lake from.
Okay, let's move.
So office supplies really haven't changed too much. Tree removals are a big one. The budget amount I placed here is equal to my final budget that I ended up with last year.
Okay.
In terms of tree removal. Dues and subscriptions really haven't changed. The big driver of that is our contribution that we do to the Southwest Conservation District, which is $1,500 fee there. Training education went up slightly, and that's because my land stewards are the process, one's certified, the other one's in the process of getting certified in pesticide sort of training, certification. So there's annual requirements for them for continuing education there. Vehicle maintenance slightly up, and that's basically fuel costs for operating the vehicles and fuel also that kind of goes into the new tractor that we just purchased there. Then sewage fund is pretty much, it stays the same there, and revenue is still left at projected $12,000, which may be a little bit higher than that. It's up and down with the building market there. I don't want to overdo something. I'd rather be under.
Any further questions for Kevin or comments?
I got some questions on some of the smaller items, Kevin. I just was noticing that the advertising and public notice was sort of a little larger than I expected compared to the actual. Same with education and training. I probably missed it. We went over so many things.
Yeah, so advertising, the cost of advertising in the newspapers went up.
Yep.
And we've been having more applications, which drives the cost up.
Well, you've spent $800 in 6 months.
$1,000.
Right. So
Currently.
if you spend $800 again, you're gonna be over the $1,000.
And that's why I went up to the 2,000 there.
Yeah.
Is it similar with, is there a reason that for education and training going up quite a bit?
I just indicated that one that I have land stewards which require continuing education.
Is that new?
Correct.
I got another question for you. You're always in like a little bit of a tug of war maybe with the utilities, right? To get them to also take out some trees. I think maybe you told me you identify some trees for them sometimes.
So, yeah, we've been close working with the Eversource with removals. They've done recently a huge project up on West Street with removing a bunch of trees along the West Street there, because there's a large amount of outages up there. When there is a tree fairly close to the wires, I go to them first to see if they can remove it. And if they can't, then I have my contractors go.
You know, that's of course what I'm wondering about, right? Can we sort of push them to do it so we don't get stuck with the expense, I guess?
Yep, and that's the first thing, if it's close to the wires, because our crews can't work within a certain limit of the wires, you have to be certain certification of line safety approved by Eversource there.
Okay, so at some point you would say we can't even take down the tree. They have.
At some point, I have them when they have to make it at least safe enough for us to take it out, so sometimes they may take half the tree off and then we take the other half off.
Okay.
But they've done, I have to get a list of it, but they did a couple hundred trees for the town of Guilford this past year.
Anything further? Hearing none, Kevin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna sneak the golf course in because we have attorneys that need to
Need to get
to leave. So, golf course number 128.
Thank you very
hello,
much.
Chris Hodgson. And Ted. Still morning, isn't it?
Let me sworn in.
Oh, we swear at you.
Yeah, no, please.
All right, what do you got for us, guys?
First of all, thank you. My name is Chris Hodgson, Commissioner on the golf course. I'm filling in for Steve Berry, who's our chair, who had avoidable conflict this morning, and he asked me to fill in. I'm joined by Commissioners Greg Broderick and Mithun Shashkel, who are in the audience and here to support our budget, which we approved as a commission on December 13th. I just want to make a brief statement about the budget, that it increased by $30,000 over last year, that we would account for that by some $13,500 in salary for includes maintenance, which went up by $7,500. Our part-time maintenance line included wages that were less than minimum wage. We're paying $14.50, and then on July 1 it goes to $15, so we went to $15.50. We increased the clubhouse line by $6,000 in part due to creating an administrative assistant position for Vicky Ahern to assist the superintendent with really running the course, from all the paperwork, ordering, running the clubhouse, scheduling, as well as running the women's golf league. So she went to 1845, and then the other 1,500 is Ted's. So that's about $15,000 approximately. We also budgeted $12,000 for improvements, which Ted can speak to, but it includes fixing a stone wall that's crumbled, leveling the tees, and there's been talk of seeing if we could afford a patio. And then there's $3,000 increase in water costs. The last point I wanted to make is that revenues for this year should exceed what we had projected, that we had projected $200,000. We're at $145,000 now approximately. And when we come into April, May, and June, we're expecting another $100,000. So we should be at about $250,000 for the year. So those remarks I had. Welcome any questions.
Thank you, Chris.
The water, I'm sorry, the water is going up, Chris, because didn't we get a thing that you didn't get, that there was no increase in the water bill at the moment?
Well, you all know July and August, so our water bill is a little higher than normal because it was so dry.
Okay.
I guess the answer, Sandy, is it's not the cost per droplet of water.
Right.
It's the amount of water they're using.
Okay.
Correct.
That's good.
It's like almost.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Get it down to the last drop.
So we've done pretty good this year, and you're anticipating a couple more months. Is there any plans as far as marketing or anything new on the horizon to maintain and or increase the use?
Well, we've had good luck with, we've affiliated with a golf pro in Madison from the Klein driving range. He's run 4 or 5 youth clinics, which have been pretty well attended. And we want to advertise through that.
We haven't done a lot of marketing other than what we do our golf tournament. And we try to get mentions in the paper. But our marketing, we really need to talk more about it. I'm not even sure what that we even have a budget for it this year.
Well, basically Park and Rec also runs some in their flyers, and their, spring flyer, they'll run golf lessons and stuff like that. So between
Well,
our.
my only concern is that, you gotta get ahead of it all the time.
Absolutely.
I know that we've improved and you're doing pretty good now, like you said, but I would be concerned about going forward that any initiating programs and that type of thing, so.
I understand.
Are we listed on any of the, the golf sites, when you go looking for golf courses?
Like Golf Now,
Yeah.
something like that you're looking at. We were, but they were taking when Joe Dunsmore was was on our commission, they were taking too much of the sum that you had to get into Golf Now in order to take, so that's kind of why we got out. Because we were a smaller golf course, not a bigger municipal, 18-hole golf course with carts. That's what they were kind of more people were looking at that.
So it's cost prohibitive. It's not,
Correct, what it was saying. That's how we kind of got out, but it's something we can look into as a commission.
Yeah, I see you've got $1,000 for either advertising or public notice, and you haven't spent anything in 2023 against a $1,000 budget. So I know at one point you had somebody working on your website.
Yeah, we've done a lot to improve on Facebook, and we have an email list, so we send out blasts to people that cross-reference with
Or even special events. I remember at one point we were voting on special events, but I just would encourage, to Matt's point, spending what you got and including something, because that's the way we're gonna, if not grow, certainly we want to at least maintain.
We will do that.
We know what the struggles were financially.
Right, we don't want to go back to that.
And just to note for anybody who's listening, the anticipated revenue goes up by $34,000 this year. So you're anticipating that over the $199,000 we had budgeted last year. So
Yeah, we're going to see an increase in membership, and certainly since the COVID lockdown, the golf course took off. And these kids seem to like to play, so it's become popular again.
Now we got to make them stick.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Until they're old enough where they want to play 18-hole golf courses all the time. Right?
Yeah, but then they'll bring more of their kids in.
You got it. Right. Yeah, it's a good cycle. All right. Anything else? John?
A couple of questions, probably just clarification. So I saw this bank charge line disappeared. Is that?
That's the credit card.
So, yeah,
That was basically our credit cards, what we would charge per. It was,
so all of our credit cards currently, not all of our credit cards, but most of our credit card usage, the fee is paid by the town, which we've started to look into to make some changes to that. So the golf course was the only commission that actually was showing that as an expense. All of the other departments, Darlene can stop me if I'm saying anything wrong because she handles all of our credit cards. That is just netted out in the revenue lines. So I'm not sure if that's.
It could also be that we haven't made the entry yet because it's now goes through Park and Rec. So we have to take out a piece of what's charged and charge the appropriate departments the fees.
That's only if you tell Park and Rec.
Right.
Oh, no, they're all.
Oh, yeah, I get that pink note all the time.
Change that you could charge the user.
Regardless of the law change, it would be a huge change for Guilford. So, putting that back. So we had started talking about that. I think Lou and I worked on it a little bit. We just need to revisit that again. It just kind of got lost in the shuffle of so many other things.
Yeah, and again, you're right. We do need to look at it holistically because when people pay on credit cards on their taxes.
That taxes is totally separate, right?
They pick up the big.
Correct.
Right?
Exactly right. Taxes is totally separate.
I think we should, it'd be interesting number to know that across the town, we are paying those fees because that's what a lot of us changed.
Right.
They want the convenience.
We have data on it. you know, need to bring it back up, bring it back on the table. So
Anything
but
else?
we'll take a look at that for the
Yeah,
golf course.
I appreciate the clarification. So that's somebody wants to buy a round of golf and then we owe MasterCard their 2% back. Okay,
Correct.
so the town is
Covering that
carrying
right now.
another line. Okay. I guess I wanted to ask about merchandise items. Looks like they're going up, but we're selling those, right? So that's just generating more revenue, right?
Because of more people in the door, we're selling more balls, we're selling more hats, more shirts.
Okay, so that's
We're
just,
selling-
that's actually just good news.
Correct,
It's
yeah.
an investment.
More merchandise, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the only other thing I wanted to note, and I think you maybe went through them, was ground maintenance went up a little bit, maybe 12,000 more. And was that the stone wall?
Yeah, well,
And the
actually-
possible patio? Is
That
that?
stone wall that holds the front of the clubhouse actually just came down right around Christmas time.
Okay.
We lost about a 6-foot section of that, so we're gonna have that fixed. We're talking as a commission near our picnic bench along the road near the parking lot. We're talking in putting a little patio. When people come off the 9th hole, a lot of people kind of hang out there, so we're kind of just thinking about
Okay,
putting a little patio area over there, and then we're talking possibly redoing level in 1 or 2 of the tees. So that's why we put in a little bit of money for those projects.
okay, I wanted to just kind of note why that bumped.
Anything else?
Nice job, keep it up.
That's it.
Thank you.
One more, what's the special event? You probably mentioned that too, and I think I might have missed it.
Special event is just our tournament.
Tournament?
We have a tournament that we set, usually second or third week.
So Stephanie, or people, pizza truck.
Okay.
It's been-
Yeah, yeah, I've been,
So we try to be inclusive and it brings a lot of people in and we get
Yeah.
a lot of sponsors.
That's
So it's
probably
been a
great
good event every year.
advertising right there.
We do it after Labor Day.
I have one ask. We make sure it's not scheduled on a fair day parade.
Yes, that's.
Oh.
Well, that was the pizza truck.
Blame it on the pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was what it was.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you for waiting.
Oh, thank you for getting us in.
Yeah, thanks for getting us.
Thank you very much. Nice to see everyone.
Always a
Thanks.
pleasure.
Okay, health is finally next. Here we go.
Stay, Chris.
It's been a long morning. Yesterday we were on sunshine track. Today, forget it.
Yeah, right. You're a good audience participant though, every time you agree with something. Yes.
Gonna bring everybody back down. The health department is 140.
140.
140.
140.
Hello, I'm
Hey,
Sonia
yeah.
Marino. I'm your health director. Up until probably about a year ago, I was kind of stuck doing some pandemic work. Since then, I've been able to really wrap my head around the department to see what we really need. The budget you have in front of you, right now, it actually is 2 budgets in one. At one point or another, WPCA got combined into the health department budget, and that is what did not present well last time, and which I'm trying to explain this time. One of the handouts you have in the black bolded is what the health
I don't
department's.
have that in front of me
Oh,
today,
okay.
so you'll just have to explain.
Okay, sure. So our actual ask is 241,709. The WPCA's ask is 72,034. So my budget for the health department just reflects the needs in which I'm dealing with, but does not include what the WPCA needs to get on top of what needs to be complied with for your sewer avoidance program. Your sewer avoidance program, maybe a couple years ago, somehow the budgets got combined, and I'm trying to speak delicately until he can speak towards the WPCA stuff himself. This is Larry Marsick. He is our new chair for the WPCA.
Okay, so I'm Larry Marsick, been involved with the WPCA, everybody knows Water Pollution Control Authority.
Yep.
Okay, it's been involved, I think it was established in 1966, 67. In the 1980s, we got 2 orders from, at that point, DEP for sewer avoidance program. What the state wanted us to do was put in treatment plants and pump stations and sewer lines and stuff. So for us to get out of that, we went into a sewer avoidance program. And that worked very well for many years, until probably about 15 years ago when the state told us, and there was someone, I don't know if anybody been involved, Everett McLean. He used to be on our board, a very old engineer. did very good on his reports and stuff. And then finally the state says, well, maybe you can back off a little bit because we're still dealing with people like Old Saybrook and stuff that has more of a problem. So at that point, the WPCA kind of laid back on some of the very detailed reports. And then also our budgets got reduced. So over the last 10 years, we've been behind the 8 ball and not doing a lot of the sewer avoidance program requirements that was part of the order. So we recently had conversations with DEEP, and they're not going to do any enforcements because we're not doing it, but they want to see us get back on the wagon, I guess what I call it, and try to redo the sewer avoidance program. Okay. And then there's a very detailed description of it in terms of doing walkovers, doing water quality sampling. One of the big things is, and some of you may have dealt with it, is that we have a 5-year pump out period where septic tanks have to be pumped out every 5 years. So in order for us to send you a document saying that it's time, pump it out, we have to have that information in our computer, and then something gets sent out to each employee saying it's time for you to pump out. We have boxes and boxes that never were put in, so we can't tell anybody anything at this point right now. So what we're trying to do now is get, I guess, back on the wagon and trying to get some of that boxes of information back in the computer so we can start moving forward with the sewer avoidance program. So what you see in front of you today is our first step into going in that direction. The only thing I can tell you is that over the last 10 years, we haven't put very little money in, which was a savings for the town. But now, I mean, I don't think DEP is looking for doing any enforcements, but they're looking for us to step up to the plate.
And
Well, it's a lot easier to be ahead of them than.
No, yeah. I mean, the options you have is to do nothing and then wait for the order to come, wait for the enforcement to come. Or be active.
On your need to get back up to speed or whatever, have you been part of the conversation of the rewriting of the zoning code? I think.
I have been working with that in MS4 as well.
Okay,
Yes.
another question, I don't need to, just as long as it's been done. How about with town clerk and that type of thing as far as keeping, I know the 5-year thing, it seems to me that should be a fairly mechanical thing, because that's actually very important. From the avoidance perspective, I have a little
Yeah,
bit
that's
of-
like the low hanging fruit of the tree is to get that back on board. So right now we have pump outs that come in as a form saying they pumped out the tank at your house. Okay.
There it is. Tracy.
Thank you.
Okay, so, and then it gets put in the computer so we know when to notify you next.
That's where I'm trying to get to.
But we
Getting
have
it in the-
boxes now, we just have
inside
boxes.
computer.
So we need someone to do that. We need a person to physically do that. And over the years, ever since budgets were cut, it was, health department tried to do it, but, they're running ragged now, never mind trying to add this to this. So we need someone, first of all, it's the first thing to do is put all those boxes in. So that's what this budget for a part administrator is, to start putting that stuff in.
Do you know if it's part of the checklist and property is transferred of whether or not it's up to speed, or is that a health department?
So there's 16 elements in which the wastewater facility program should be based on, 13 generally, and then the town has many more. And in that is the pump out program in which we're talking about. So it's only one of the elements that we need to enforce. The pump outs right now in other towns, they have something called Carmody, where the pumper pumps it out, and then you'd be able to just go online and check it yourself. For whatever reason, the town has a different method of doing it. And so right now we have paper copies that we've had interns and free labor to try to sort it out.
How hard
But
would
it's-
it be to get online with that?
Well, that's what they're trying to use NRGov. So in this proposal is for, right now, we're a 35-hour work week, and this is basically adding an entire job on top of my department of commission. So the request for this is 5 hours for my staff, meaning the sanitarian, myself, administrative assistant, the person who works with NRGov. And the reason why I'm bringing that up right now is because we've asked to see if NRGov can be a portal similar to Carmody, in which our person who's working with NRGov is trying to figure out. So we can have something similar as Carmody is, so they can self-report, which would take quite a bit off the office, coming in and out, being able to get that online. Furthermore, it would be great to actually get those as-built online too, but that's something that's being discussed as we go. Permitting system with NRGov is extremely important for us to keep DEP at bay. In other words, the more that we know of variances and we can tell DEP, well, great, we have 50% co-compliant systems in 2024, but we have 42% that need 3 variances, 15% that need 1, right? The math didn't work. But what I'm saying is knowing and having that data, being able to extrapolate out of the system is a key element to enter
That
to
goes to
the
what I
wastewater.
said, staying ahead of it, because
Yes.
you gotta start playing catch up and it's gonna be over, so.
And that's what we're trying to do now. And that's why I'm asking for the 5 hours as well as a WPCA
So
coordinator.
that 5 hour,
So-
does it make sense now that DEP has decided to bring Guilford and other communities, I assume, up to speed? Does it make any sense to go back to the separation?
I would prefer that, actually.
I know, that's
I
the
would
way
absolutely prefer
we
that.
thought it
Yes.
was gonna go, as a separate.
But we would be talking about 2 budgets in which they haven't changed out of
So
their
that's
changing.
it, man. Okay, all right.
But to present it
I
to
didn't
you.
mean to.
So and the third, for overtime, which is $39,772, that's the position, that's.
Okay, so that's the 5 hours for each person in my office.
Right.
How many people is it?
That's a sanitarian, a registered sanitarian, myself, and environmental administrative assistant. And then on top of that 39, that's just for the 39,000. There's a 26,312 right above it, which is the WPCA coordinator position for 22 hours. So when I had spoken to you guys last about escrow accounts, that's a big duty of this WPCA coordinator. Those escrow accounts would be able to be accounted for, given monthly statements to the people that have them with us. Also encourage and get a program started to get more money into these funds so that these communities that have come on community systems can actually pay for the repairs.
Could you
There's-
refresh everybody's memory about those accounts?
I still couldn't follow you because you said it so fast. How many people will get on, how many people will get 5 hours more of work?
4, my.
So
whole
20
household.
hours,
Correct.
but with existing staff who will go from 35 to 40.
Correct.
Okay, but then you're also asking for a new position as well.
Part-time position, yeah,
Part-time
part-time position, right, as a coordinator.
Of
So,
the WPCA.
yes.
Sorry
If I
for the
can
little-
interrupt for a second, the overtime issue, we've got to resolve, not here today, but 3 of those people are exempt positions. So they not entitled to overtime per se. So the question is going to become whether we make them 40-hour week positions, which would negate the overtime, but would also add to the full-time salaries. So that's part of the discussion. We've been touching on this and it's been a moving target, not Sonia's fault. There's a lot of pieces, as you can see. So that's part of it that we got to discuss further.
I'd like the escrow accounts and I'd like to explain. So we have community systems and your ordinance in place here in Guilford is a little more stringent than the actual statute in place at state level.
Just community systems, you just
Community
explain
systems.
that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Yes,
no, there are a lot of people that don't.
Yes.
absolutely.
We don't
It's
have
just
to let
us,
them
it's the people that might be watching
Right.
afterwards.
So community system is more than one residence on one septic system. For example, West River Colony, you have 3 or 4 or 5 different complexes on one central septic system. The intention is if that fails and there's nobody there or money to take care of it, how are they going to do it? Now, with my department, separate, is gonna say, you have an order, I need this fixed immediately. I don't care, you have sewage on the ground, figure out how you're gonna pay for it. So WPCA part is that you're probably one of the only towns that actually has these accounts, so that's great. They're just very low, and that's what we need to bring attention to bring them higher. When somebody has, usually a system's not gonna go down, it's not gonna fully go down, right? It'll be a couple tanks, maybe a leaching system. For example, one system that I just had repaired cost $105,000, and that was for 10 units, and they had about 50,000 in their account. So no matter what, they're going to have to put their own money in if their repair is necessitated in the next couple of years. But in the meantime, WPCA with the health department sent out letters to these individuals saying, your accounts are pretty low. Give us a plan to tell us how you're going to bring it up higher, and also know that these are here and therefore your repair. And also the last part is your system malfunctioning? In other words, take a look at your system, tell us if it's in working condition. And we've gotten mostly replies on those, mostly replies.
So it's just really a pocketbook for money that they can grab. You know, if it's a big one, they're gonna have to pull from the association, but if it's something that's, reasonable, they can just write a letter to us and then we'll say, okay, you can take the money out.
So you hold the escrow accounts for all
Right.
these condo
And
communities?
replace it.
And then replace. So one of the things that's important to understand here is if we shut somebody down, right, for health reasons, right? and people can't live in those facilities. Guess who's on the hook? By finding them a place to live, by paying for them for a place to live. Us,
The town shuts them down.
what's that, the DIA or whatever?
URA,
The
Universal Relocation.
Universal Relocation Act.
Well, we talked about that last year, and there's no question that that's part of the discussion of getting
Getting on top of this.
My question I have going forward is we have a number of major developments online. Are they going to fall into this?
So you've got a great question there. That's the one thing with the building and the boom that everyone's been talking about today. I see it first. For example, today alone, I was supposed to have soil testing. One project for us is 8 different projects, which means 8 different systems, less than 7,500 gallons per day, big apartment complex, to do soil testing for 2 straight days for us. That in turn is going to go to planning and zoning, going to building. So we see it before anybody else does.
Okay, my question is, are they going to be accounts that require this?
Yes, absolutely.
Will new account, I know we're struggling to get caught up. When you have a new one coming online, do you have enough, can you make sure that they do have adequate funds in there and that they're managed? And are they in banks or wherever they are?
So we're just starting to work on that process of
Yes.
getting them together. That's, we know the
But new,
numbers.
we're not adding to the problem, is what I'm trying to get to.
We haven't had to add a new one yet, but it will be coming soon.
And you feel that we have enough regulation systems or whatever in place?
I think we're gonna be modifying them to make it more user-friendly to the people, so they wanna put the money in and stuff. Right now, it's, we're
What
learning.
would be required to make it so that we don't have to depend on their good mood that day?
Well, I think it's important to figure out what the number is, you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's what I'm asking. What do we have to do to make sure that we're not adding to the problem?
So one of the things that they did do is send those letters out to make sure that these individuals knows there's accounts and they need to start putting into it, basically bringing their attention that in 1980, they put $16,000 into account, and that's woefully inadequate right now. The new stuff coming on board, unfortunately, your ordinance also needs to be taken a look at. Your WPCA ordinance is what I believe you're referring to.
Yes.
So it does talk about common versus community systems. That needs to be looked at and possibly changed. Because right now, common system is any system over the 2 residents, which does not follow the DEP definition. Those,
Yeah, so we got some.
so we have some.
I just don't want to be
Yes.
And
adding
we've
to
already
the
had these
problem.
discussions in our meetings.
Correct.
We've already kind of
Okay.
got this
All right.
ball rolling a little bit.
You know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the only thing that we didn't discuss is that there is some additional offset fees that we're looking at as possibly, bringing in some more income to the town in terms of charging more money for them doing their testing, review of plans. We're on a lower end side of what we charge now, so that can offset some of these additional fees that we have here.
Something for Lou to do.
So when we raised some fees in 2018, we did not raise these fees?
We did, but not as high as they probably should have been
Okay.
for the health department. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is I have been doing this in other towns as well as your sanitarian, so we do bring some experience into working with this. One of the things that would be the WPCA coordinator with working with us would be to get grants. So DEP wants us to update this plan. That's going to take a lot of money to go through the designated special areas and redefine them. That is something that Shirley, your sanitarian right now, already helped me do in Westbrook. We did this quite aggressively in Westbrook. And so she's normally is your sanitarian. She'd be out there doing this, like
Whatever it
septic.
costs, it's gonna be less than
Yes.
sewers.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
millions of
Yeah.
dollars less,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The only way to look at it.
That's the exclamation point.
I mean, especially in Guilford with all the ledge. It's just-
right.
I mean, the
And,
reports that based on sewer ordinance was in the early 80s, so they want us to update it. And they're willing to pay, I think, 55% or something of the cost.
They
So-
meaning DEP?
Yeah.
But you
sorry,
have to do it a
DEP.
certain process by doing a quality-based selection.
Yes, it's almost like doing a bid for schools
For
and stuff.
services.
Yes.
Yeah, any services.
I have some questions as definitely a layman here, but so there's an initiative to make sure people are pumping out their sewer systems every 5 years, and that's an expectation of DEP,
Okay, so the
state government.
the state code says recommendation every 3 to 5 years. Your ordinance says, Guilford's ordinance says mandatory 5, which is in,
Oh, okay, so it's our ordinance, then it's not
Yes.
deep.
Based on it.
but it's based on deep orders.
Right.
So we have an ordinance that's really going beyond the state's level.
No, it's
No.
outside.
It's outside.
State's saying
The other way.
three to
saying-
five.
We're 5 years.
We're saying we're doing this, so please don't give us sewers. So we're keeping on top of the pumping of the systems, which is something that the Westbrook, Old Saybrook, Clinton, we're all under the same wastewater facility type plan. So all of those ordinance in those towns are also 5 years. We're not the only one.
So I'm trying to understand what's driving us to do this. Is it our ordinance or is it DEP?
The orders from DEP.
Orders from DEP to have a sewer avoidance program. And then in the sewer avoidance program, there's a list that we have to meet.
And we're doing
And
that.
one of
with
those
the sewers.
16 elements is to have these sewage systems pumped out every 5 years.
And
Did they give us any money or is this sort of an unfunded
I don't
mandate
think
as we
any money.
might like to?
I think back in the day, some of the reports were funded by DEP, like in the 80s, the Malcolm Kearney report. There's been several engineering reports with all 5 of the towns, and some of them were offset by DEP. Not in, unless we go for the funding.
To say it's a good thing to pump
We will
out.
go for
It's
it.
not a
it
bad
makes sense, you
you know?
We will go.
Right, I'm just saying that they tell us to enforce this.
Right,
Give us
it's
money
5
to do
years.
it.
That's the maximum.
The town's not paying for the pump out.
No,
That's correct.
no,
The record keeping.
you'd be foolish not to pump it.
Right, because it's like having a car, you don't want to change the oil, you know?
Is this only for shared systems? Am I missing
No,
something?
no.
This is for everybody.
It's for everybody.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So they ask us to enforce this, but we don't have any money, particularly from the state, to help us do this.
We were supposed to be enforcing it.
As part of the order from
Yeah,
DEP,
1980s.
it was in the early 80s.
But it's in our best interest to enforce it.
Residents.
Absolutely.
It's in our best interest to enforce it.
It's the best
They don't
interest.
give us any money to enforce it, but they hold something over.
Right.
Yeah.
So will they actually fine us if we can't enforce this
Yes, by
5-year?
requiring.
They could force us to put sewers in, although they tried that in Old Saybrook 35 years ago and they've
Right.
been able to avoid it since that time. But my suspicion is Old Saybrook and Westbrook, they have a pretty tight plan and then pretty tight oversight of things like pump outs and shared systems because they were perilously close to being forced to do
Right.
it. We don't want to be.
Did they-
Well, we actually contemplated some systems. We bought a piece of property off of Page's Lane
Yes.
for exactly that,
Yeah.
that reason,
And-
was
and
to
that
put
was-
a treatment plant.
And that was for the center of town to be pumped down there
There,
and then have, and then I think 5 years ago, we did a study there to see how much sewage can actually take in that parcel there,
Right.
you know?
Do they define at a minimum what kind of enforcement we need to do? I mean, would a letter be enough to just say, please, you have to pump out your system in the next, would a notification be enough?
So from doing this in other towns, once you send those notifications out, that's actually going to automatically trigger an increase in my department because you're gonna find systems that are failing, systems that are malfunctioning. You'll find busted house sewer pipes, filters, and that's another reason why you have to stagger out sending these. Otherwise, it would crush not just my department, but town hall south. So it
Let me
has to
take
be-
your question a little further, and I think this is where you want to go. Said, what responsibilities do we have to ensure that you pump it out every 5 years and Mike pumps it out every 5 years? But if Mike waits 7 years and hasn't done it yet, do we have any responsibility to go identify them, tell them to do it? But then on top of that, what kind of leverage do we have to force them to do it?
Something along those lines, what is our response? It seems like unclear, unfunded. Right? So, you get into this mess of, what exactly we're supposed to do when maybe we want to start telling the state,
But I don't.
what exactly do you want us to do?
But don't most people do this anyway? Because it's like saying, don't changing the oil in your car. If you ignore this, it's to your own peril.
Right.
I mean, you could foul up your whole septic system. So-
It depends on
Can I-
what soil perks.
Can I venture a guess? I think some people might have sewer systems that actually just work well. And maybe they don't. And some people have systems where they're like, oh, I notice moisture in the yard and
Like this,
I
I
get it
just said.
pumped pretty regularly.
Yes, it could be hydraulically not overloading, but it could be polluting the sound. And that's actually more of the problem here. We have a nitrogen issue in the Long Island Sound. Which we're under order, that's why we're under orders. So the sandy soils, those bacteria, those viruses go right into the sound because it's so permeable. It's not gonna fail and outbreak, it's going right into the sound.
So we're not trying to satisfy the state of Connecticut or meet any requirements. We have to do this. There's so many reasons that it's
Yeah.
irresponsible for us
It's
to
like
not do
moral.
it.
In addition to the
Yeah.
state
Well,
requirements.
well, we have an order to do it.
Yes,
we have-
yes.
yes,
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 But the
right.
order is 82, 83, so that's
Mhm.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
But, it's really, to satisfy the order and also it's the right thing.
Yeah. So if we look at the budget numbers and split out the continuing what you've been doing and then the new WPCA stuff.
It's,
What do
brought that up on the
Oh, okay.
screen, so.
Oh, great.
The items in green are the WPCA additional amounts. And items on the column on the left is the standard health department budget, so.
Okay, so it's the
So
budget.
can we get a copy of that?
Can you keep scrolling down?
It's, okay,
Oh, that's the.
There's also this 16 elements that should be in my packet as well.
oh, I
as the-
didn't send that to, I didn't send that to Tracy to put it up, just this, but yeah. Everything's there as soon as we.
Sonia, I had a quick question for you. I mean, you and I are gonna have to go through the salaries again anyway, but I want to understand, you've got an overtime budget for health at $6,300, which is for the administrative assistant, correct?
Yes, that's different. That's for.
And then under WPCA, you're also including the administrative assistant again for 5 hours.
That is correct.
So that's gonna be a problem, because then that person's working 45 hours a week, which is gonna trigger overtime and time and a half. I'm not sure it's even healthy to have somebody scheduled 45
So
hours a week.
the 6,300 actually is through the ELC grant. So again, ELC grant for about $87,000, which is going to offset any COVID work. I cannot use those for time for somebody else to do DEP stuff or DEP.
I understand that. I'm worried about the individual working that many hours.
Right now, we have it in balance as 3 hours a week as an average, but it could be 1 hour, it could be 2 hours. However, she is our key point for Energov, so she's definitely going to be needing those 5 hours to work on the Carmody system, which will, or Carmody, the Energov system to mirror
I
Carmody.
think the question is it 5 hours for the same person in the left-hand column and another?
It's about 2 to 3 hours on average in the first column, and then 5 hours absolutely in the second.
So
It's
that's
2
too
to
many
3
hours, is the
hours.
point.
Many hours.
So she, I mean, again, I could use the 1,600 for somebody else to do that's funded by the ELC.
I
So
think
that's time
the
and a
point
half.
Mitch is trying to make is one person cannot do more than the 40, otherwise we're triggering real overtime at that point. And that would really need to be discussed at that point.
Right.
Okay.
So.
We'll discuss it further. I just want to make sure that's where you go. Okay, we'll sit down, we'll go through this some more.
So this, if I'm looking at it correctly, 72,000, so of additional costs in the budget for WPCA, of which the 39 is not a recurring item, that's the catch-up item.
Well, that would be, I would assume going forward that the 5 hours will be needed because it's going to not go away.
Okay, so the whole thing is gonna be year after year, okay.
So the green numbers then are not reflected in the yellow numbers.
Total.
It's total.
It is?
Total.
Yeah, you're right.
All right.
The number that you see is the total. This just splits
A
out the
little
two.
punchy, okay.
So the very end, it says the total is 33,743, and I have 313,743, and I have 313,744. It's off a dollar, but from rounding, but,
Throw something out here. Sonia's making a point about how maybe these departments should be separated. And I don't think that's a budget issue for me. It's gonna cost, either or whatever bucket it's in, but I mean, that's also.
it's fine, and we did discuss that, but we typically don't do that without some discussion. I believe years ago, it was separate, and then Dennis,
Dennis Maniscal.
and brought it together, and this is,
Well, it is today.
And we do have, there is another item attached that tells you what you had paid in 1990s. It was like $145,000 for WPCA budget. So now it's zero. And there is a chart I had sent, I think I attached with this.
okay, I can get all that. I just brought this one item up just to see right now.
That one.
Are we at what I might consider crisis stage of DEP as far as getting up to speed, or are we okay if we start demonstrating that we're going in the right direction?
I personally believe, I deal with DEP all the time, that if you show good faith effort to move forward, they're not gonna come down on you.
We're still at that point,
Yes. Yes, no question.
but it's,
I'll make sure I have a conversation with Commissioner Dykes about this. I'll get to see her on the various, we do not want to cross.
They normally like seeing,
push in that direction.
Well, as long as we're initiating it.
Right.
And
Yeah,
then,
I want to demonstrate good faith.
Proactive,
You know
better
what
real,
we're gonna do.
you know?
Please note too, Westbrook, Clinton, and Old Saybrook were really being examined, and that's why everyone was like, all the attention was on them in Old Lyme. That's gotten fixed. Now Madison and Guilford are starting to get looked at. Closer.
Rather, be ahead of it.
Get closer.
all right, you want to go to more tedious stuff like the balance of your budget?
Sure, the big stuff's out of the way. So, just, I think I reduced in most areas, or it stayed the same. I went up $200 in uniform and clothing allowance because that's per contract, a union contract. I didn't realize that before. We have 2 sanitarians. The office supplies, I bought a little bit because we're gonna have to send out quite a bit of pump outs. I did shift, the printing cost to them because it's their pump outs that need to be sent out with postage and postcards. So that went to them and it increased. Mosquito control stayed the same. The certified lab work, we did increase, but it was a WPCA's increase. So for $5,000, we're not sure, out of those 16 elements, there's a couple that talk about testing water. And I'm not sure exactly what we're gonna have to need to test until we start really working on this. And that's why theirs is 5,000, mine's 1,000. There's one, I think, other increase in item that may find, and that's for education and training. And that's for the Energov conference, which is something that we really need to work with is Energov. That is for one person to go to that conference to really start working on the pump out program, as well as whatever we can get onto that system that's gonna help us through these, through tracking these DEP stuff requirements.
All right, any questions on those things? Anything else for some? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you. What is this? Thank you, Mr. WPCA. I'm sorry, I mixed your name. Thank you very much.
Good seeing you, Larry.
Let's see. Let's throw a
Next
library
is
in.
the very patient library director. Who I did give him a heads up, I was putting people in front of him, so.
I learned a lot of things there. It's good.
It's number
He's gonna go home
127.
and pop out a secretary.
No, 127.
No, okay, I got it.
I was.
So as I always do, I just want to take a second to thank,
What number are we?
128, at 127, I heard.
Sorry, I threw you.
127.
127.
so before I get into the increase, which is basically just the estimated electrical cost is really the driving force of that. We're a fairly big building. But I just want to quickly mention the Guilford Library Association contributes a little over 32% of our operating costs, and which comes out to $109,784 that the Guilford Library Association raises and contributes to the library costs. And the Friends of the Library are giving us a record amount this year of $99,400. So that's what allows us to run the busy sort of library with the services that we do while our budget is kind of average, which is a good thing in my mind.
The
So this-
Friends is actually used for operating budget too?
Sorry?
Friends,
The Friends, I mean, not in the sense of like a light bulb or something, but when they say we do a project that's gonna involve a little electrical work in the background, sorry, yes, they will. But it's almost, it's what allows our book budget for the town to be $5,000. That covers probably our newspaper subscriptions, and not much else. So that's the Friends are what makes that happen. And just to give a little perspective on sort of where the library, how we match up to the libraries in general. Every year I fill out a state survey, which is quite extensive. And then they produce the results. And the results just came out last week, which is why this is in my mind. So we're 50th out of the state of Connecticut, out of 165 municipalities that responded to this in terms of the population served. And we're 31st in terms of the angelic rating, the wealth.
Yeah.
But in almost every other category, we're either, in the top 20. And that's just because we're busy. And it's not just me. I mean, we did it under Sandy as well. We've always been a busy library. This town really likes this library. We were third in terms of
Wi-Fi sessions per capita, which is interesting. That's just because we're a lot of people in the building. We were 6th in terms of adult programs that were in person. We were 8th in terms of the attendance of those programs. 10th in terms of circulation per capita. 15th in children's book circulation per capita. Pretty much every measurable, 20th for library visits. So we're a busy building. Pretty much any library service you can imagine, we're excelling at it. But when you get to the municipal outlay, we're 80th, which is right smack in the middle. So we're not asking too much from this. So what it is, it tends to be maintenance. So anytime I come with an increase, it's almost always maintenance, and that's the case now. Because of the recommended 35% increase in electrical costs, that forced me to raise $19,840 in the estimated, electrical bill for next year. There were a couple of other smaller increases that led to the overall increase. One is we're in a consortium called Libraries Online, which is 28 libraries. They had a 3% increase, which amounted to $2,200 about. The main reason for that is the delivery service. And that is so important to us because the state delivery service sort of had some issues.
I'll say.
This is recorded. See.
I know,
Don't
but
hold
it's the
back.
truth.
This is coming from
I'm
a
on the
state library board member.
I'm on the state library board.
No bias or anything.
Well, it
was a beautiful, when I first started, it was a beautiful
Right.
system.
It shouldn't suck.
It was amazing how it worked. And then when it crumbled, they tried to they were outsourcing it. Everything worked beautifully. Then they stopped outsourcing it and it did not work beautifully. Libraries Online came up with its own solution, which allowed us to, after a long journey, get back to the level of service that we were accustomed to and our patrons were accustomed to, which is essentially you put a request on a book, you're going to get it in about a week. And that's what we were always used to, and that's what I hope to maintain. So that unfortunately is costing us a little more in maintenance through Libraries Online, because the trucking company had to raise their fee a little bit because of gas prices. Then a lot of little increases with basic things that we already have. No, nothing new, but what was it? Sorry. The contract with the HVAC computer side of it, the Andover system, that went up by a slight amount, just $250. The HVAC, I estimated slightly more expenses. At some point with Steve Night, I'll put together a plan for a capital plan to replace the HVACs down the road. But we're finding the yearly maintenance on them is going up slightly. So it's really all just nuts and bolts maintenance. There's no new services involved, no new staffing issues involved, nothing like that. So that's the highlights.
Questions?
Rob, I was exactly going to talk about this document you shared with me. Rob sent this out last week about some of the data.
Can you?
And I'll give you copies of this, and we'll probably have copies of that for the budget presentation, but let's get it ahead of time. But just a couple of things. Library visits per capita. Guilford is 5.35 per capita. The average for towns between 17,000 and 2,500 population where we fall is 3.65. Statewide average 2.7. Again, the percent of municipal appropriation, percentage of their overall municipal revenues. Guilford is 1.01. Average towns our size 1.23. So we're doing these, we're providing these services, higher level of services, and greater participation at a cost that is more than reasonable. So,
and I was like to mention, the Friends could have a situation, but they weathered the pandemic with really not missing a beat. So I think they're pretty adaptable. They made almost as much in a pandemic here as they do normally. So I don't worry about them at this time, but that is a factor. They're such an integral part to our offerings that if something like a hurricane happened on book sale weekend, we definitely.
You said we were number 2 in technology. Is that simply people going into the library using?
It's just the Wi-Fi stats. So really, it's anyone who walking in. If you log into our Wi-Fi at any point, to me, that's how I used to count.
Even like it's ordering a book or something, you mean?
No, that would be like in the circulation statistics. So there's all different, for whatever reason, Wi-Fi is one of the highest. I think that's just the number of people that are coming in with either a cell phone or a device and logging on. There's often people in the parking lot logging on as well, or in the courtyard out front. So it's a lot of people, every
It even
day.
extends to the northeast section of the green. I
Well,
think.
there's a state service that does that, but that's not in that number.
Put it in.
So there's, so there are some. But we're
Have
basically.
you ever gotten, I know Sandy brings it up regularly. Have you ever gotten an estimate for putting a generator?
we did it, we had some talks, and I was talking with Steve Nydorf, and I'm blanking on the gentleman's name that spoke to us. I would like to revisit this. They were coming up with too many obstacles in terms of structurally. I still think it's possible and think it's a good idea, but the last
Give me an
conversation.
example of an obstacle structure.
It's a big unit, and we really don't have, like, the parking lot comes pretty much right up to the building, so there's not much room on the library grounds themselves. Now, if we start to think in terms of like that daycare building, that gets into a lot of moving parts, but I still think there's a possibility. It's been a while since we had that conversation with Steve, but I would like to revisit that. So I never got to the point of getting a concrete number because we never got a fully fleshed out plan developed. But I think it's an interesting idea. We've been lucky with the weather the last few years, but we have had, power outages that had consequences. And we had, once we came back on, we had, enormous numbers.
Well, the
of people
reason I
that
thought, obviously, we just approved updating the directive. Senate unit, and, like I said, Sandy brings it up, and I do remember the needs, and our term is coming.
Well, it's not, it really doesn't impact library service per se, but it's to benefit to the town if there's a power outage, because except for a shower, the library has everything that a community, it's a smaller building, but it would have heat, light, Wi-Fi, water, another warning. I know, but I mean, I just don't think it's like the library wants a generator. It would benefit the town if the library had a generator.
That was part of what I was trying to get to when I asked if we had gotten any numbers, because, we don't necessarily need a system that is going to power all of the needs of the building.
Right. And that was the conversation we were having, and we never got to like a really firm, like, if we just did this, we'd be in, and I'd like to get a little detail on that. But the Wi-Fi would be a huge one. I feel like if we could get the Wi-Fi in the bathrooms, we'd be pretty good to go.
Right, and the reason I say that is, I know you don't need anything else on your plate, but I could envision that being as something to promote or a specific fundraiser in the community, because I agree that we have a great library, and I know there's a lot of support out there, and the only way it's gonna get done is start.
And just one other comment about the delivery service. That is actually a resource sharing among Connecticut towns, and there's always that push from the state government, I believe, more about towns doing more resource sharing and regionally resource sharing. So that's why that's so important, even though it's a 3% increase.
Right, that allows us with the collection of about 100,000 volumes, we have access to 1 million volumes because of that, 28 libraries that are tightly knit.
And now I'll be quiet.
Good job.
For a minute.
Sandy, you probably have some good insights into these issues.
Just a few.
Just a sec.
Come on, listen.
Where would you?
No, yeah.
I've been up for 17 years, almost.
Go ahead.
Rob's got the insights.
All right, Rob, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Human resources?
Sure. All right.
Yeah,
The number of you.
140.
104.
Oh, do I have the wrong thing on?
104. Okay. Full-time salaries are myself and the human resources generalist, just the two of us, full-time salaries. The expenses and travel, just because cost of travel gone up, I just bumped that up from $1,400 to $1,500. Our printing costs, we've been able to keep those pretty much in line. I was able to reduce that a little bit. Office supply gets to pick up because the cost of office supplies has been going up. Permits, dues, subscriptions, same thing. Those have trickled up a bit, as has the education and training costs. That's pretty straightforward. It's a total of 6.61% increase over last year. Questions?
Also facing continuing education of the kind, that seems to be a common thread.
I'm not facing it in terms of mandatory, but I do partake in a lot of different educational opportunities and conferences to keep up with the trends, the laws, go to HR.
This might be a good question for you. Is there a policy formal policy that Guilford has for its employees about continuing education, or
Depends on the.
sometimes are
depends on
they
the-
left on their own?
Depends on the position. Certain positions, the tax collector, the town clerk, those positions require something, I think they do, require continuing education to maintain the certifications. So it depends on the particular, position.
Is that, you think, the general rule, if it's required?
Yep.
Keep the position there.
Required, but I found,
Okay,
yes, but I found that there's a lot of people, myself included, that take advantage of training, mostly in state training because of the statewide organizations, sometimes national training. There's a lot of that going on, which is great. Plus, we bring training here for a lot of the safety and mandatory trainings that need to be done. So we've got a lot of things going on there.
only because, I mean, obviously, if it's needed for the job, that probably makes sense. That's probably the best way to model a policy. But I know my company will want to go get some certification, go ahead, but they don't.
And we do encourage that, yeah, we do encourage that in a certain respect that, in the police contract, if they get a degree, there's an additional educational stipend, which talked about, with some of his folks the other day. In the GEA contract, if someone goes forward beyond what's required in their position and gets a certification, there's a one-time $500 stipend. So we are encouraging it right through that contract, which involves most of the people that may not be your department head professionals that would go anyway.
Okay. I asked the question because it can kind of be endless, right? People want to pursue more education. It's like, hey, can I go to college a little longer? Why not? Sure, go ahead. All right, thanks, Mike.
You want to do,
Go ahead, employee benefits is next.
146? So in employee benefits, the first thing that shows up is always the most volatile, which is the reserve for personnel item. This is going to, for this year, the Teamsters contract is under negotiation. We have not yet started. We will be shortly. So there's going to be salary push in that regard when the contract is settled. So we put money aside for the Teamsters contract. There's also personal contracts with the chief of police, the deputy police chief, and the finance director, as well as the economic development director, which have not been finalized yet. So we have to put money aside for those 4 positions. We are in discussion. I know the Board of Selectmen is very much aware of this. I'm not sure the Board of Finance is, but we're in discussions right now with the Guilford Employee Association, with making some significant adjustments in salaries, especially we've noticed a number of salaries are low, especially in comparison to other towns. We're losing people, so we're trying to make some significant changes there. So we put money aside for that. And finally, there's a $100,000 item in there, part of employee benefits for potential cost of living adjustment for retired pensioners. So I'll stop there because that was a mouthful, and I don't know if there's any questions about reserve personnel. If not, move on to retirement plans.
Mitch, where?
Yep. Workers' comp falls on the insurance,
Different budget.
different budget. That'll be next. Mary Jane allows me to continue. That'll be the next budget we go through. Because I go through 3 of them. This is the second of 3. So our retirement plans, this is a budget that includes a lot of different things. It includes the money we put towards the Teamsters, because we pay into the Teamsters pension as part of their contract. We pay actuarial fees for our pension plans, legal fees. We have a volunteer fire security plan that we monitor and also have to put money towards. Of course, the big one you may think of is the pensions, the money for the pensions, as well as the town pensions and the police pension, as well as defined contribution plan for new employees, and they're not all new anymore. So breaking that down a little bit, the Teamsters pension contribution right now is one that's flat because we don't have a contract. So that may and probably will go up a bit. We've got, numbers for actuarial fees, legal fees in there. The pension contributions are actually taking a drop, as reported yesterday at the pension committee, based on a couple of factors, the most of which is the fact that we've got our pensions under control. And by moving to a defined contribution plan, we've been able to stabilize our pension contributions to the point where this coming year, there'll be about a $40,000 drop in our pension contributions towards the town plan and about a $27,000 drop to the police plan. Conversely, as we add new participants to the defined contribution plan, as well as people's raises going through, which puts, because it's percentage based, we're going to see a significant increase in our defined contribution plan. The total increase is just under 3.33% for the total retirement plan budget. So I'll stop again, because that's also a big one. I don't know if there's any questions on our retirement plans.
I just wanted to jump back to the reserve for personnel.
Sure.
You haven't
No,
spent.
you missed your turn.
I'm sorry,
You
what?
missed your turn. I already asked for questions.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You haven't spent any you haven't used any this year, is that correct?
That's Mary Jane's department.
We just approved, it missed going to the Board of Finance, so it hasn't actually been done. We just approved the other day at your
Oh, yeah.
meeting, money for the HR director.
Yeah.
From this year, but a minimal amount.
Yes, very minimal.
Oh, right,
We
okay.
did that the other day, if you
Yes,
remember.
yes, so the amount that's in FY '23, you might have some left at the end of the year from this year, is that correct? The
Yes,
215,
and, right,
913?
if that money is available at the end of the year, we do, keep that in that amount. We have money set aside in committed fund balance, and we look at what we have in there, and make adjustments to what we ask for you in the budget based on money that we have set aside. So we try to take all of that into
So the
consideration.
407 isn't total new dollars, there may be some money
That would be new dollars.
That's the
That would
ask
be
for
new
new
dollars.
dollars.
That's
It
the
could
ask.
be offset by some money that are left.
If there's leftover, yeah.
Okay.
If there's leftover in this year, right.
Right, that's what I
Mary
meant.
Jane, if I'm not mistaken, in certain places where we have made some certain salary adjustments here, there, everywhere. You don't pull it till the end of the year to see if we're actually below that.
No, so the only time we actually take money from and move reserve for personnel is when you have a negotiated contract.
Right.
So, the GA didn't have their contract for a couple of years, all the money was in reserve, and then when it was finally negotiated, then we moved from reserve into the appropriate line items in the current budget year. We don't go back and do that. So we don't, if a few people get changes during the year, we don't do that unless it is very significant and would really, make an effect on the budget in the current year. But we usually only make those adjustments when a contract is being negotiated, such as Mitch's contract was recently negotiated and finalized. Therefore, I came to you with a request to make that change. So that's when the money gets used.
Right, so, but there is a possibility of utilizing some of those funds. the
If we needed
250,
more than the 400,
if we
yes.
needed more than 400.
Okay, so it wouldn't be part of the 400, it would, okay. I got it.
Correct.
Because we currently have no significant claims against that 215.
Yeah, that's what I was trying.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. But I did not take that 215 into consideration for the new budget yet. We only took into consideration what we actually have set aside.
Okay.
Just quickly on the retirement plans.
Yep.
Mitch mentioned that the defined benefit plan actually decreased, our contribution requirement decreased by about $85,000 over the three, given the valuation date of June 30th, just as what we grew prior to the market crash, less substantiated, plus the 3-year rounding or curving or whatever.
Yeah.
Works for everyone.
5 years smooth.
5 years smooth, 5 years.
I was gonna say, a few of those contracts had the first year or two higher than normal.
Yeah,
Other contracts.
but
when.
Are you going back to the contract? Yeah, yes.
Right. But so we are $85,000 to the good, which is relatively close to the number that we set aside for COLA. So pretty close to a wash if we're able to keep that in there. But the important part is we're keeping the discount rate at 5.75%. And that's on recommendation of Millman. We are the lowest, she said.
We're one of the lowest,
of
not the
all
lowest.
Their clients in the state of Connecticut on the discount rate. Yep, well, which is.
That's a good-
way it
good
should
thing.
be. It keeps us well funded, and allows us to weather the market swings. So there's no, and the pension committee voted to keep the discount rate, or recommend that we keep the discount rate at 5.75.
By bringing that down, by getting to that point, it's helped us stabilize these numbers.
On a similar note, you mentioned our Teamster contribution. How does this year's contribution compare to?
Well, he's got it flat now.
Well, it's flat right now because, well, it has been flat. The last 2 years, the Teamsters contribution was the same, just by contract, the amount we had to put in. But we don't know what it's gonna be in 23, 24. We don't have a contract yet, so we haven't been made aware of both the pension side and the medical side, which is the next thing I'm gonna talk about. We'll get to that.
But we will never be liable for some of the struggles that
Correct.
Teamsters have had previously.
Correct.
We will not be liable for that.
We-
There's gonna be an adjustment,
Yeah,
but not.
right, because we pulled out of the old plan, paid off the old, we're paying off the old plan every year. That's in that budget, paying off that old plan
And
for
if they
25
have
years.
Struggles, they will not be our problem,
That's correct. We're just paying as we go.
even through any negotiation contract.
I got a question on this line. You went pretty quick through
Sorry.
the reserve for personnel, so I got a
All right.
question. I think you mentioned that you reserved some money for possible COLA increases for pensioners. Is that
That's what Matt was just referring to. The Board of Selectmen is asked to put $100,000 into this line for a potential. It's not, nothing's been agreed to yet.
Yeah.
Potential cost of living adjustment, which would equate to 2.8% for all three groups. It would be the town, police, and the Board of Ed.
Okay, we just went through kind of a round of that this year, right? In the pension committee meetings, meeting minutes, I see.
You
kind of
did, we
the
did.
Raging debate, but we said no this year, right?
We said no officially to the police union's request.
For a specific.
For a specific request, which was just for police.
And it wasn't even for police union, it was for a
Retirees.
group of 7 retirees.
So, but it would have had to go.
So that'll be revisited
Well,
every
we
year.
can, we
probably.
can revisit it anytime. We have a contractual obligation to revisit it every 2 years. It's in the police contract. It does not stipulate that we have to add, to give one. It stipulates that we have to review it and make a recommendation or make a decision as to whether or not we're going to grant it. Based on the way the discussions went, the Board of Selectmen, as well as with the pension committee, we opted not to do that. Couple of reasons for that. Largely the scope and size of it was very significant because it's based on the consumer price index. So the COLA at the 100% would have been a 7.1%.
So
7.1% COLA granted. At 60%, it was 5 point something. And it would have been a significant burden in terms of the additional revenues, taxes required by the taxpayers. So, but we were considering trying to do something because it's been since 2008 since the COLA was granted to any union. And also, I think collectively, we wound up agreeing that we were going to do for one, we were going to do it for all. So we decided to start looking at some options and we came upon, well, what if we put $100,000 for a COLA? I figured it out to be about 3%, but the actuary said it was 2.8%. And it's contingent upon a couple of things. One, we have to approve it, put it in there. And secondly, as we talked amongst ourselves, that if there were challenges with the budget didn't pass, that would be an area we might go to relatively early. So.
And put it before the folks.
Yeah. And it's actually in there.
Have we ever budgeted for that kind of item before? Or?
Not since 2008.
Okay. And then just maybe a quick clarification. Mitch is calculating his $407,000 number, and he is ignoring that there's possibly $215,000 that could maybe carry over from the previous year.
From the current year.
From the current year.
Right.
Okay.
We did not take that into account because we don't know what might happen between now and then. Will that money be available? Maybe, but we did not take that into
And then
account.
you'll close out everything at the end of the year.
Correct, and that
Things
money would
might
go in.
Transfer and move around.
Correct.
Okay, sorry.
It's all right.
Get you through one line.
Okay,
No, it's good for
We'd like to be
everyone to
transparent.
understand it.
we'd like to be transparent, make sure everybody knows what we're doing.
So next up in employee benefits is heart and hypertension. This is money that's reserved for potential claims that have not yet been settled, so we put that aside. Retirement benefits,
Is
this is.
1,500 the right number? Because it
No,
was
yeah.
15,000.
Oh, that was the one,
That was the
right.
one
That
yeah,
was my
it
question.
should be 15,000. That was a mistake on my part.
I thought it was finally going away, because
No,
everybody
I know.
it's going away.
It was we caught that
Mitch-
yesterday and
Mitch missed a zero
I
and
missed a
gave sent me
zero.
the numbers. That's
My-
right,
my-
I forgot about that.
my
But as
apology.
far as the claims though, I mean, do we have existing potential claims? I thought
Yeah, we do.
that was-
We still have four existing potential claims are still outstanding. It could be
No, I thought they did away with that at the
They
same
did,
time.
but if you were employed prior to
That's
the.
what I mean,
Yeah.
so we only have a limited number of
limited with four right now that are being negotiated back and forth. It's a long process.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, so,
there's no question, but it has been, I mean, going forward, they're not adding to that.
correct.
Can you just revisit that a little? Are we waiting for employees to sort of retire or we're waiting for actual cases?
That's a good question, Jonathan. So we had a couple of cases that didn't come up until as the person was retiring, they put in the claim. So this goes through the legal department, goes through the medical departments. It's a long process. We are paying, I think, on one still, and I think there's very little this year's been paid out, I think. But we've put aside, because there's potential
Yeah.
charges.
How many more employees are
I don't, there may be a couple.
still eligible? I
There may
guess,
be
to-
there's a couple of police officers that were hired prior to whatever the date was. It's very few,
Okay,
very few.
not at your fingertips, but it's dwindling down. Is really
Absolutely.
the
Yep.
question.
Absolutely, yep.
I thought it was going away too. I thought that's why.
And
you
it will.
knocked it down
I
to
thought so too, it's
1,500.
what, it's actually why I didn't
She was-
question the number when he gave it to me,
I know,
I thought it was accurate.
yeah.
But it's not dwindled down that much.
I didn't
We
question it, I thought this is
could
great.
check into it further with legal to see where our potential is. Maybe there's some room there. I don't know.
This is a bit of a tangent, but pay attention to what's happening in the legislature. There's a move for presumptive cancer.
Yep.
Diagnosis.
Especially among
for
firefighters.
Firefighters. Yeah, which could.
And that'll take this, that'll take this type of budget skyrocket.
CCM and cost are both actively fighting any of that legislation.
Where that legislation's come up several years in a row, and it's one of those just keeps, pushing away, and it's eventually there's something will be resolved, whether it's a full vote or some sort of other presumption there.
If I were betting man, Mitch will be testifying in front of the legislature.
Testify on a few things to push off.
He'll be.
Now, we don't cover that with
Hypertension.
overtime.
Nope, no, I'm right here, I'm right here on, you know what, Jonathan, actually.
That's right.
Because there's so much that's been pushed to Zoom, instead of me traveling to Hartford now, the last couple of years, any testimony I've given for bills in the state legislature has been at my desk on Zoom during town time.
Okay. Wow.
So,
Good.
all right, retirement benefits, those are for two individuals, that's negotiated long ago, that's a fixed cost, it's been the same every year. We continue to pay that. The FICA budget really is Mary Jane, based on our salaries. We do cut that by a significant amount because we put all of our almost all of our part-time employees on a different plan, which is called the Premier Plan, which does not go into Social Security. But Mary Jane's come up with about almost 1.4 million in our FICA costs. Unemployment compensation, here's one of the good things in the budget. This is coming down significantly. You can see what we spent this year has been negligible. A couple years ago, we were up around close to $25,000 to $30,000 mark, mostly because of COVID. We got hit real hard, like everyone else, about people who were not working. It was mostly, not exclusively, our part-time employees who were not working, who put in claims, and we were paying those claims regularly at some very high numbers. Now, the only thing we're looking at in unemployment compensation, unless something else comes up, which I hope it doesn't, has been typically our part-time employees, who are technically seasonal, but when they go off season, they put in for unemployment, which they are eligible for. We also get some claims for some very part-time people, sometimes poll workers, sometimes camp counselors if they're not college age. Those things come up few and far between. They're small amounts. You know, they add up, but I think we could be good at $10,000 this year as opposed to $30,000 in that budget item.
Wait, but poll workers put in for,
If a poll worker has another job, here the problem with the unemployment compensation is if a poll worker has another job somewhere, they put in for unemployment, what happens is they look, the state of Connecticut looks back at what all of your income has been in the last 12 months, let's say.
Oh, okay.
Part of that was, so what we're paying is a couple dollars, but just,
I thought
it just
they,
is,
I thought they poll work,
no, we don't,
November and collected.
they're not collecting enough. I figured that out. It took me a while to figure that out though, because I saw it come through. It's just that we're one piece of their unemployment, which is usually just negligible anyway, but it does come up. Retirement sick leave. This has been phasing down. This is one thing that has been phasing down because there's so, less and less people are eligible for retirement sick leave. We've been funding this at $50,000 a year for the last several years. This is another area where Mary Jane does have money put away. For this year, in fact, we did have a very large amount. Oh, is it indicated here? Mary Jane?
100,000.
100,000.
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah, 100,000. So we put in 50,000. We've paid, thank you. We've paid out 100,000 so far for retirees. We've got some long-term retirees that are being paid out their sick leave. So therefore, this will go over budget, but like I said, we've got
Money set aside.
money set aside. So we want to continue to fund that for now at 50,000 a year, which should keep it level and be able to fund those retirements
Yeah,
as they come forward.
So I'll just add to that Mitch and I have discussed this particular budget because there is money set aside. We knew we would be tapping into it. We'd like to keep that budget at a steady 50 for budgeting purposes.
Yep.
We know that we might have some large claims. They'll be covered, by that fund, but, just to keep us steady, instead of going 0 one year, 100 the next year, we're gonna keep that at 50 just for level budgeting.
Next, that reminds me, you sent me the spreadsheet with the retirement sick leave that you update every year.
Yes, I will. Okay, longevity has been eliminated, so that item goes away. Medical insurance, see an increase there, as you might expect with medical. Our Anthem contributions, Anthem is going up, but as mentioned, I think earlier, at least another, we are in the process of bidding out our medical insurance. We may stay with Anthem, we may not. We haven't seen any numbers yet. It's a possibility that this number may come down, either through Anthem bidding this or someone else taking over our account. So we have to be seen. But right now, the indications are that our Anthem gross contribution will go up by about 5%. And then there's some offsets to that from payments for COBRA, payments from employees to the medical fund, retirees. That brings it down to about 4.3% increase in the medical part of it. However, we've been able to reduce it further because even though our HSA contributions are going up by more people getting on the HSA plan, and our Teamsters were kind of like shaky, we're not sure exactly what that's going to be. Our reimbursement to employees who don't take insurance has come down significantly. And that's because the contracts today, the amount we pay out for a waiver for new employees is significantly less than people who are retiring, which was based on, it's now a flat rate, which is much lower than the percentage rate that people are retiring at. So we're budgeting $46,000 less this coming year than this current year, which is a significant decrease in that item, which is helping to bring our total medical budget to just over about 3.3% when you put all that in there. Any questions on medical?
Yeah, so definitely the big question would be this bid process that we're engaged in. Is this going to pan out in time to be effective for the budget that's coming up? Are we going to have numbers? Are we going to?
Probably not for the budget vote. No, this is one of those things that's gonna go down, I think it's gonna come down to the very end. Kind of like our insurance did last year, which I'll get to.
But what we have here is a number that we know is solid.
Right.
Is there a
This is based on the
scenario,
Anthem's renewal.
Yeah, we don't see
to
this
us.
going any higher.
is there a scenario where we will take another bidder and we will, knock on wood, experience some savings and then the budget will be running a surplus theoretically
Well,
because of our.
the hope is,
bid?
hope is we might be able to make an adjustment in time, if you guys set the bill rate.
Yeah, if it depends, I'm not sure exactly when the bids are due and then we have a decision to make. It's not just gonna be snap your fingers, we're done. There's a lot that's gonna go into that. And if we do make a change, if we make a change, there'll be significant impact on employees just from everybody's gonna get a new card, everybody's gonna have to, figure out, the new things. We try to make it as seamless as possible if it does go.
So I have a couple comments to make. So first of all, on the claims side, the regular claims side of medical, we really don't expect to see a big savings. Anthem is looking at the same claims that Aetna's gonna look at, that Cigna's gonna look at, that whoever's gonna look at. That's pretty much gonna be the same. If we have any savings there, it may be in administration fees, if they wanna throw us a bone. Where we might anticipate savings is hopefully in the stop loss area. We're bidding out stop loss two different ways, one as a whole package and separately. So it's possible that we may do stop loss from a totally different carrier. So that's kind of how we're doing that. My other comment about, if you remember this year, we came forward with a lower cost in the current year of medical. So even though we had budgeted, I'm just gonna throw out a number, 400,000. We said, okay, we really only need 300,000. And we came to both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. We're putting into the medical fund that lower amount regardless of what the budget says. So and I only say that because if we budget this higher number and we get lower rates, it doesn't mean we're putting that higher number into the medical fund. We would come back with an adjustment to say, this is the amount that we can save and get their approval from the boards to put a lower amount than we're budgeted. So then that money would sit in the budget. It wouldn't go in the we're not gonna put more in the medical fund than the final amount at the end. Right.
And there's a couple of ways to accomplish that. One of which is if we don't have the bid numbers in time for when the Board of Finance makes their recommendation to the referendum. But in the interim, we get the final numbers. You guys could adjust the bill rate by the differential in terms of lower costs. So you could actually affect the change by a lower bill rate than you had anticipated because costs are going to be lower. That's one way to do it. The other way is to let it fall to the fund balance. Otherwise, you're going to be taxing it at the higher rate.
Correct. And it's just gonna depend on the timing of putting all of that together.
How many bidders are there? And then there's not a possibility that they'll come up with different forecasts for our claims?
I won't say that they won't.
Yeah.
My point was they're looking at all the same data.
Yeah.
So
In theory, they
in
won't.
theory, the answer would be no, which is why I think if there's any savings, it's in admin, because that's maybe where they can, make a difference. How many bidders? There will not be many.
Not many in the state.
Not too many to do.
There are
That's
not
too many in the
many,
state,
not
though.
many that can do it.
How far
I would
along
say
are we?
5 or less.
I thought we might have known who these
The RFPs
Now-
on the street, right?
bidders.
Yeah, we're-
Bids out, we start.
Request for proposal?
Yeah.
where we're at?
It took us a little longer to get to where we are today than we had planned, but we're out there now.
And does the request for proposal have a date?
It's being done by our consultant, so I'm sure there's a date,
I
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we
Okay.
don't have that yet.
So maybe it won't.
So it's being completely administered by our insurance consultant, so.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if it's gonna be done within this budget cycle. It sounds like.
It's most likely
Oh,
not going to be done by the time the Board of Selectmen has to make their recommendation.
Right, the bids will be due within that time, but it takes a significant amount of work from that point
Compare all the.
to, so.
All right,
But, and what obligations do we have with our unions if we're changing do we have to notify them?
Notify them.
Get a green-
Notify them, we'll have a meeting with all the unions. If we do make any change, we will definitely be meeting with them.
But if MJ is correct, there is a possibility that we'd stay with our current carrier, but change our stop loss carrier, which could save us money.
Which wouldn't
In and
have
of
any
itself,
effect on our employees.
Which wouldn't have any effect.
No effect on the employees.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe a dumb question, but even if we went to another carrier, the way we self-insure our employees
That would be
wouldn't
the
matter to them either, right? As long as we didn't change.
No,
the
we
way
wouldn't
cover
change
them.
how we're funding it, but we need to make sure that we are providing the same
Coverage.
services, the same coverages, the same doctors.
Yep.
That, all levels would.
I see, yeah.
I mean, that's the time consuming.
Yeah.
Part of the whole process.
It's called a
Change
disruption.
the provider.
It's called a disruption rate is what the difference is between the providers that Anthem covers today and someone else may cover. They may cover more doctors. I can't imagine they would because Anthem covers about everything. There may be a couple less. It may not matter. It may be in Litchfield County. It doesn't affect anyone. All right, but it may be a certain provider that's right here in Guilford. And that's gonna be, that's gonna be looked at very carefully.
Okay.
It's very, very tedious and time consuming.
Yeah.
Which is why we allow our consultants the
To spend the
pleasure of
time.
looking at that.
All right, next up is OPEB. The town's made a commitment to start contributing to OPEB. We did 18,000 this year. We're proposing 18,000 again next year. Our life insurance cost is the cost for life insurance for full-time employees, not including the Teamsters. They're on their own program. That's going up a little bit to 46,800, just based on the number of, we've added a few more full-time employees over the last year. Same thing with our employee assistance program. That also goes up a little bit based on the number of employees. That's at 2458. That is for emergency personnel. They have their own EAP that's through the departments, but this covers 112 full-time employees at $21.95 per person. And we've had some really good experience with people who have told me, because it's a confidential service, people who have used the EAP have been very satisfied. Our long-term disability insurance is provided for the town, for the police and fire personnel who are on the defined contribution plan. This is a contractual thing. So we're up around 10,000. We budgeted that last year. I think we're gonna be able to hold the same number this year. Even though we are adding personnel, it hasn't come on as fast as I thought it would this year. So we should be okay holding that number. Then we've got waste transfer station reimbursement to employee benefits for life insurance, medical insurance, FICA, that comes back to us. Mary Jane has estimated $175,000. So that is employee benefits. Any further questions on employee benefits?
We have okay, I know to talk about OPEB before you ask the question. So Mitch, I guess we didn't talk about the OPEB number.
We didn't?
Nope. The OPEB number for fiscal year 2024 is actually $30,000, up from the 18. It does go up each year until we meet, I think, yeah.
Okay.
That was, you hit the question.
Yeah. As soon as he said it's the same, I went, whoops, we didn't have a, we didn't have, and so I brought it up.
And
It's-
what is the time estimate that we get? I know we're never gonna cover it, but I mean, is it?
When do we think we start drawing?
We have, we are on a 5-year, we're on a 5-year laddering plan. We would start to consider and look at usage in the 40% funded range. And we would maybe start to actually use it after it's hit 50%. But those are all dependent on,
The 5 years started last year?
correct, this is our second year putting money in, so.
We're
But
ahead
it,
of it, but we gotta stay ahead.
yeah, and so it all depends on the valuations, markets. The markets have been down, so that hasn't been.
Now's the time to put money into the market.
And yeah, well, good thing you say that, because we're in it and we're going. But, yeah, so that's.
I'm not sure I quite understood that. Are you saying that when our investment income can cover 50% of the OPEB?
When the OPEB is 40% funded for the overall liability,
Okay.
then we can start to look at taking money out. And then once it hits
Not
50.
taking money out, getting less.
No, paying claims.
Oh.
From the fund.
Paying the claim. And the claims are currently covered through the medical fund.
Right.
So the goal would be to, in the OPEB, to transfer money from the OPEB trust fund into the medical account to cover the costs that are being paid through OPEB. So, but we have to be at a certain funding level before we can afford to take money out. Because if we put 18 in today and